The motion to accept the minutes with second, all in favor?
Aye.
Before we get started, Mark Berman, I guess Danielle's excused as well, Carol?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
She wasn't sure she could make.
Okay. So Mark Berman and Danielle Black excused. The agenda,
Mike, can we just double check, Jason, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Just verify that's working.
continuing on other business. Mark Bogosian, South Peak Resort revised master plan, planning board discussion of South Peak Resort master plan, and whether to accept proposed revisions to the 2007 South Peak Resort master plan. Board of Selectmen invited to attend, but it's not considered a joint board meeting. Laura,
Mark Bogosian with South Peak. We are here to follow up on some questions and clarifications based off of our previous joint meeting with the planning board and select board. In an effort to try to make sure we continue to get back information, so we've done some of that. With that, we have copies of the unit counts just to continue to update as we come in. These are no different than what we do it every time we come in for a subdivision, but I can hand these over, which you guys can have as well. So some of the items we want to do is continue to make the project move as smooth as possible.
I gotta make, you know, hold on.
If you need one more, we can just.
Oh,
In an effort to continue to move the project as smooth as possible, we want to keep making sure we provide as much details from an association standpoint. As we're self-monitoring, you know, as far as understanding what's been built, what's proposed to be built, and then what changes after the fact. When someone buys 2 lots and decides to build 1 house versus when someone, you know, does a renovation and adds a bedroom or whatever is happening, we want to try to get a better sense of it. One of the things that we have in front of you here is we wanted to be clear that there was 170 units before our time. And that was before we bought, you know, the development and then reinstated, you know, here's what we know we have for a master plan and work with the town on that. And going back, we now realize that getting a detailed bedroom count is much more complicated than we anticipated. Or you, but I know that on the town records, if you touch base with the town, work off the records of the town, it says that I have a 9-bedroom house. I assure you it's 5. That being the case, we believe there's a lot of discrepancies that we need to now dive into. It's not something we underestimated, you know, what would be available for information. As an association, we're tracking, we have copies of all the plans since we've owned it. We're working to make sure we're limiting what's being done, both from a landscape, from a building, regulatory, meaning confirming things are being built the way that they're being proposed, making sure the landscaping is done properly, making sure that the people, when there's, you know, areas that are not supposed to be disturbing, we're confirming it. If you drive through South Peak now, you'll see more caution tape and tape much more accurately. Those are new restrictions, things we're doing to make sure things are being done in a manner that we at South Peak share in the town's, you know, common theme of let's build this out to be a beautiful project that also maintains all the attributes that, you know, Lincoln is. That being the case, I wanted to be clear tonight, bedroom count is something we're working with, contacting homeowners and trying to get up-to-date information.
I mean, does your association have any authority to inspect houses?
Yeah, it's a little gray, right? Like to tell somebody, hey, we've approved it, we've signed off on it. We'd like to go in there and see everything. A lot of people are more than happy to oblige. But some people are like, well, I'm in Florida right now, why are you gonna get, like, I'm not coming into my house, so we need to make sure that we're coordinating that as we continue to move forward. That's something that, as we move forward and as we continue to develop, it's very easy for us to track. Like, we understand what we have, we understand what we're doing, that's why what you see here is 18 lot subdivision, it's approved to date, removed units. You know, fireside townhouses, removed units, 8 lot subdivision, and we're gonna continue to operate into that mentality. But that's how we'll work together to allow us to get to a point where we're keeping an eye on both construction quality, retaining walls, quality of construction, as well as time of construction and what's being done. Making sure people are getting all their permits signed off, both with the town and with the association. We've put in more rules and regulations as well as have much more on-site management. So everything that's according to that master plan, everything that's there, we can continue to fulfill, and it's being done in a manner that everybody's happy with. So those are the two biggest hit points of, you know, we anticipated being able to kind of just do the legwork of just saying, here's the total bedroom counts. And as I kind of stated, there will be a little bit more work to get to that. As far as the master plan, I didn't feel tonight we should bring back the presentation that we had done a few meetings ago as far as if you recall, we gave a packet out and we went through all of those items. Instead of going through that in the same great detail that we did before, I felt like it'd be best to just open that up to questions you had, and we're here to kind of answer different things and talk through anything that we think we should start to put on our radar as we continue to move forward.
The 8 lot subdivision proposed 7/12/23, you have a unit count of 1.
That's because 7 lots were lot line adjustment. So there was 7 existing lots. Those were 7 lot line adjustments. There was 1 additional lot. So what we'll do is, this is just the spreadsheet, but every time there's a subdivision, we have all the backups. So that way, when there's a question like, wait a minute, 8 lot subdivision 1, well, that was 7 of the 170 was lot line adjustments, 1 additional.
So is that 8 lot subdivision, is that those ones that were done down, additional 8 lot subdivisions, the ones that you presented? That were down along the river and up by the
That's
pump
part
house?
of the 18 lot subdivision.
That's part of the 18.
Correct. So the 18 lot subdivision was the initial 18 new additional lots. Then we went to removing some lots. Those lots were removed in order to create Fireside. So Fireside then created 41 new additional units. Then there was 3 lots additional removed part of that project. Then the 8 lot subdivision was 7 lot line reallocations with 1 additional lot on that stretch.
So shouldn't we probably have in here, where you removed units part of 928-22 subdivision, that we probably should write down what units were removed. So we have it for the record,
Yeah, we'd be happy. What we could do is,
same down below.
yeah, so what I could do is do the tax maps or do the, you know, in reference, so that way we have that and we can continue to update that. And one thing we'll do too is we're gonna duplicate all records. So one thing we've worked on, we're gonna have a system for all of the different permits that we apply for and we're asking all of the new applications that go into the association. We want copies of building department permits. One of the reasons why we want to see that is to make sure everything drives. That, you know, right now there's a lot of water tap fees that are going to be associated with South Peak. People are building these houses, it's, you know, call it on average 15,000 a whack to get that application in. When we're doing our inspections, we want to make sure it's not just according to the plan. It's, you gave the town this. We want to make sure, wait, we see a hot tub. That's another fee. Or we see there's there's outdoor water spigot, there's a bedroom's 5 points. You know, so that way we can ultimately make sure that our records, the town records, are all in sync. And that if somebody does something, there's more checks and balances, because we understand the amount of just construction going on. If you drive down South Peak Road, you know, you see what's happening. We want to confirm everything's being built to plans. And that the nature of building, there's always changes. They need to be submitted to the ARB and submitted to the NEPO. And then if there's a associated cost factor to that, document it. Because ultimately, you know, that everything being built accurately is going to make it much easier for us and the town in 10 years from now, when we're doing the far, looker's right side of the subdivision, to know that, we need to make sure there's more allocation. Whatever is, whatever comes our way, or however it unfolds.
Anyone have any Paul?
Can someone bring us up to date on where the water tank is? And as far as installation online, what's going on with that? Whether it-
Yeah, I mean, nothing has changed since you heard this at the selectmen's meeting, but for the sake of this public, we can say that the Forest Service has approved the I guess revised location, but very close to what we had been originally asked for. They have to move it to a different area that's a little bit more level, where we require a little less cut and fill. But in the same real general area, they've approved that location. So we're gonna be working, getting the rough design of the roadway and utilities up to that site, and the tank on that site.
And then we, at South Peak, have agreed to make sure our easement and our conjoint effort is accommodating to less cut and fill, or moving the road, or, so that whole section, we've just left it be to say, let's make sure this can happen. It's mutually beneficial to get this in as soon as possible.
So that would be my question is, it's gonna be in as soon as possible, but when we look at things like the basis of design and the 4-bedroom units that are supposed to be there, that you committed to, originally saying you're gonna stay with there until we
We're
get
doing
this
that.
tank all right. So you're still doing that.
Correct, and we're doing that for the future. What we're looking, the tank and the basis of design. The biggest issue isn't the bedroom count, it's the water flow to these higher elevation. And if you notice, everything we're focusing on right now is in the lower elevation. We have projects that we have ready to submit. When I say ready to submit, close to putting it together, that we know is above that. So we're nudging and excited to have the town use the money we put aside to build this. And as soon as that happens, we'll be able to continue to develop.
Anyone have anything else?
Just for all of the the South Peak, you mean, the master plan, or?
Yeah, we're talking about the master plan, so. you're
So-
there. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I guess I do, I mean, I've got a bunch, but,
Yeah, That's
uh,
fine, I mean.
when you're talking about the tank and having it built, and it's coming down the road, I mean, the tank is, I've said this before, the town has 2 tanks that's built, and, have been built, and neither one of them has worked as designed. That's laid plans, they put them in and things don't work right. So I guess my concern is to make sure that, the tank goes in, I guess, as designed. And that it supports what they say it was supposed to do before all of this is to be allowed. That's my concern,
And I think.
as far as the tank goes. I mean, once it's in and it's performing with all its pressures and everybody, the flows it's supposed to be. I don't have any problem with everything else going through that South Peak has done as far as water allotments go. But I think, there ought to be something to make sure that it can provide what it said it was supposed to provide, and that's not your problem, it's the engineers who designed it, obviously. I don't know if that's,
No,
if
it's-
you guys did.
So let me just give you a little backstory on this, is that we've put the money up. To design our tank for South Peak alone is a rather simple project relative to tank circuits. The money that we've allocated more than covered the cost to put our own tank in, and that would have already been it. Our conjoint effort is allowing a better tank for the greater community. However, instead of us just being absentee on that, as I'm sure OJ is familiar, we've had our representation, including our civil engineers, our team helping make sure that this goes as smooth as possible. We all want to see it get done. We share in making sure this is a success, because it's crucial for our neighborhood long-term, as well as all the other projects that we, as South Peak and other landowners in town and businesses. So I think everything I've seen, it's going well, and I don't see any issues with it, but I would kind of rely back on
So I guess the question could be asked then is, if it's built as designed, but yet it doesn't perform as designed, is there something between South Peak and the town that assures that a remedy will be taking place somewhere along the line? That's my point. That's my question, you know?
The town-
Joe,
Well, the reason it's the tank didn't perform well at that, Forest Ridge was, design company, engineering company, put the tank in too high. And they had to pay 20 years to pump the water to keep the tank full out of their own pockets. Remember, that was a design and engineering fault, not the town, not the guy putting it in. But you can put in parameters that will cover that, cover our butts, if we need to address it, it'll be there.
That's all. I guess that's my question. Both you probably didn't answer somewhere.
Well, I think there's a couple of issues related to this, so. To explain part of this. First of all, right now, South Peak is under basically a moratorium that they cannot build above 900 and.
We've actually got some updates that it's actually higher.
I mean, it was 950 for a while, and I know it can go higher.
It was up to 1,000.
Okay, okay,
And furthermore, that's what we talked about, and we discussed this in the past, is that we anticipate permitting things as the tanks being in conjunction. We haven't wanted to permit things too early, meaning putting a street in and subdividing, doing things ahead of where it's gonna be to line up in construction time. But because the tank has taken a little longer than we all had hoped, we haven't pushed the projects up at the higher than 1,000 elevation.
okay, so. The tank, the current situation, there's ample water, volume and pressure to feed below that 1,000-foot level. So as they come in for subdivisions in this master plan, we will look and say, okay, is this okay to be fed by the current water situation? And if it is, then there's no reason for the planning board to turn it down based on water. They don't need that tank to build like, Fireside. They don't need the tank to build it. If they come in for something above that, or questionable, they're gonna have to prove that the current situation will feed the subdivision. And again, this is a town tank. Just like we're not gonna make, Forest Ridge prove that they can, build higher than what they were supposed to because of this new tank. I mean, it's just like any other developer. It's the town's tank. They can't build above 1,000 feet now. Once the tank is built, they will be able to do that.
Yeah,
And there's no responsibility pushed back on them other than a portion of the funding. And the easements, which they've been very good about working with the town on both of those. So as
And
each
time.
project comes in, we look and say, is this above 1,000, is it below 1,000, does the current water system at that time fully service that subdivision?
basically what you're saying, if the tank doesn't work as advertised, they won't get approvals above 1,000.
If it doesn't work that poorly, with the tank that close to there, yeah, I guess that would be the case, but I just don't even see that as a reality.
Well, I think there's a lot of things when you take into consideration water demand. If you take into consideration just South Peak, as Mark said, then maybe, or maybe it won't. Well, it won't. Same thing with the town. It's supposed to provide additional flow to the town. What if it doesn't provide that? Because South Peak is taking more water. So I mean, there's a lot more parameters here than just looking at, is it gonna provide pressure? And all I'm really looking for is an assurance from either the town or South Peak that as long as this thing performs like it's supposed to, then they will get all they want. But if it doesn't perform, then there's a remedy in place, and that we know what that remedy is. So you're not arguing, because you're not arguing about it later on. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
But like Case Forest Ridge, the responsibility fell back on the insurance from the engineering company to put the tank in, it was built by Napgun out of Danvers, Mass.
And that's fine, that's all right, that's all it needs. I don't know, is that in place? Is that in place?
I would make the assumption this is just an assumption, I would make the assumption that the oil tanner, the other firms that are involved in this, and they're major firms that we've confirmed that this is, they're the right people that the town's working with, that their insurances and their guarantees on this are there, because we know putting a tank in for South Peak would more than accommodate all the issues that would ever come, would be more than covered. When we're posting that money, giving that money to the town, we're resting assured that these are being done properly, so at least we have no guarantee of that, we're not in control of who they hire and the time and all those efforts, we're in control of the easements, which we're being more than accommodating with, the money, which we've already posted, and the time, which we've already extended the amount of time that we've given, because we eventually do want to keep moving. If this didn't happen, we'd eventually have to put our own tank in. And I can say that the people that the town is working with hears that they're right on it, and I would make sure that when the contracts, I would ask the town, make sure that the contracts are signed for the installer and the engineer, that they make sure that there's some assurances and insurance involved, because we at South Peak would never want to see that fail, as you sharing in your concern.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to make sure that there was something. So,
Joe?
The other thing, it's in your favor now, when they built the tank at Forest Ridge, they did it the old drive-through method with transit and other stuff, but now you can do a GPS, which would be accurate to within an inch of elevation, just by taking all hand tool. You won't be up 30-35 feet like Forest Ridge was, if they use a GPS triangulation. But yeah, the satellites are pretty messed up, and we're all messed up. Yeah, just my opinion, don't get me wrong.
does the basis of design come into play for the new master plan or the revised master plan?
So there's no revision to the master plan. We're not looking to alter, we didn't come in with any revision tonight for the master plan, more of a question and answer on the existing. We want to operate under the master plan.
Which, the 2006 master plan?
Correct. So we understand that we've studied that long and hard. So we understand what's involved in it. We also know that there was a subdivision on Crooked Mountain Road before the master plan was even brought into reality and the development agreement came to play. We wanted to make sure that master plan was active and good before, right off the get-go. That's what we confirmed with the town. As far as what's there, we want to help the town document whatever has been built. We also want to continue to track it for the future. And in an effort that if there's ever alterations that the town wants to do as far as reserves or just planning purposes, we can be a partner in that process. As South Peak's building out, it's mutually beneficial for South Peak. It's also mutually beneficial for the town for obvious reasons.
So you say you want to go by the 2006 master plan. But in 2006 master plan, for example, Fireside density was supposed to be low density. The Fireside project is not low density, it's high density. So what are we going by here? Are we going by the 2006 master plan, or I think somewhere I saw in your new proposal that you were changing some of the densities, and is that one of the areas that you were gonna change?
We're operating under the mentality that we're still here. We are part of that master plan. If that was the basis of where things were, it was not clear of exactly where everything was going to be. That as things have changed, just like it did when there was condos proposed down near the river, then it switched over to single family lots. And just when all these subdivisions have happened well before we bought it for the past previous 10 years. So we're still operating under that mentality. The difference between what we're doing compared to what was done with previous developers is we're trying to look to the future, be much more involved, and help plan. So in that planning phase, if there's things that the town is asking us as the partner in this, in South Peak and as well as all these other ventures, that we can get to and help document, like the Easter egg hunt of the bedrooms. We are gonna do what we can to do that. We're gonna assist in that. It also allows us to make sure that if there's questions and things come up, that we're here to answer them and continue to document it. And just like we talked earlier with this, unit counts of where it is. So that way it's much easier and clearer for boards to come, because if, we have no intentions of changing ownership, but if there ever was ownership or board change or whatever it may be, it's clear to say, yep, we have it, here's our ledger, you know, and that's what we're trying.
Well, the reason that I asked that question is because I look at and try and be transparent with all the people that would have purchased at South Peak prior. If they looked at the 2006 master plan, they would have seen that that was a low density. And I don't know whether any of them bought that way, figuring that they knew what the master plan was. I bet probably not many of them even looked at the master plan when they bought. But trying to be transparent, so that any changes that would deviate from the 2006 master plan should be transparent to all the people that are there, I would think somehow, so that they can, at least if they have any questions, weigh in on it.
So every time we go to a planning board hearing, that's gonna be a new public hearing. So it gives everybody an opportunity to discuss it, talk about it. So just because we have a master plan, doesn't mean we're not coming back and we're just gonna start construction on a project. So every time we add a hotel component, 14 unit building with underground parking, whatever that may be, that's gonna now be a new public hearing in which you as a board can weigh options, opinions, just as you do with other things in Lincoln. The master plan is really our basis for design, not our exact design. If we had a full plan of exactly where everything was and knew it, we would then be just continuing on construction, opposed to continuing to come back. So for example, if we have another simple subdivision, 8 lots, lot line adjustment, we know we still have to come back, make sure it meets engineering, make sure that all the fundamentals are there, and the general public as well as the town and boards have that ability to say, yes, speak their mind, and or no, we don't think this is the right fit based off.
Just one comment with respect to everybody purchasing the development, because of the size of the development, the Attorney General's office actually has specific disclosures that everybody has to be provided. Matter of fact, every time we've updated the 8-lot subdivision, the 18-lot subdivision, each of those, we now have to go back to the Attorney General's office to identify what disclosures are being made, and the Attorney General signs off on.
So are those disclosures made to the current residents that are there,
Every purchaser that purchases is obligated to be given this.
to be given that, so they're aware of all of that?
They're aware of what can change too. So the Attorney General, and that's where some of the delay on our end to be able to, so when we pass the planning board, so we pass on a project, because of the size of this project, we have to then do another whole list of regulatory paperwork. And that's giving everybody the ability of, now we're making sure it's signed off, that you've seen, you've reviewed, you've got copies, because we know that this can change and this can alter, and that we're keeping with the 1,018 units, and it's going to be, there's ski trails, there's gonna be retail, there's restaurants, there's places that, there's a ski lodge, and there's gonna be streets, right? So somebody could say, wow, that street that comes in, now that was a woods before me, now there's a street going to another area. So all those disclosures must be signed and back to us before closing can happen. And that way, there's never an issue with any buyer as they go. So just as I bought years ago, I had to still sign and look at those case laws.
Carol,
So I'm just trying to understand, it's not that everybody in the developers knows, only the new buyer who comes in and wants to purchase a lot.
Each buyer, when they coming forward and say, we want to buy, as part of the essentially the purchase and sale agreement. Even before that, we have to give a disclosure of what the Attorney General.
It's just new
So the
So
reason I
it doesn't
asked,
mean that every time somebody buys, we go redistribute to every owner. It's every time someone purchases.
But the language in there is the same language that's always been. So meaning that someone couldn't come back to the Attorney General or out of Lincoln and say, I bought a condo back in 2007. The disclosures that were available to them at that time allowed for the development to be able to form as it's forming. So that's,
so specifically, I'm thinking about the Riverside Terrace.
right, that's what I'm referring to as well.
Those people bought thinking they're gonna be single family homes across the street. Okay, so I'm just guessing. And so now there's gonna be, the Fireside, 41 unit Fireside. So those people do not have any notice about that change. But a new buyer coming in who buys one of the units in Riverside Terrace is gonna get a notice.
No, so they get, the notices simplify it, right? The notices are to give someone a heads up, you are buying in a community that is evolving. So to say, you are not buying in a, like, if you bought a lot downtown, that's a small, straight, LeBrec Street, you buy a house on LeBrec Street, referencing where Jimmy's house is. You buy a house there, you don't have to worry, you know what you've got, right? You have your lot, you can do it, you don't have to abide by the restrictions of the covenants of the neighborhood. You could, if you wanted to do different things or put up a shed. We have a tremendous amount of oversight to the homeowners in South Peak. Now, that oversight allows for us to make sure that, no, you can't just put up a stockade fence, you can't clear that. There's all the, but it also allows us as a developer in declarant to be able to have a declarant control period. During that period, we can change, alter, decide to put, where the horse barn is, it could turn into a big ice skating rink, or it could be single family lots, according to the master plan in keeping, and then in which we would then go to the planning board to get approval. In which if we, let's just say we said, oh, we want to build a 20-story building. We'd go to the planning board and you guys say, no, you can't do that. So there's checks and balances on it. But they know once they buy in that neighborhood that there's fees they have to pay. That if that there are certain restrictions, that there's the ability of some amenities are gonna come, that there's not that sense of, oh, I was promised this day, it didn't happen exactly that way because it's not finished and it's still in the declarant control period, which will be that way for the foreseeable future.
My take on that is what everyone is told, they're given a copy of the declaration, given a copy of the architectural guidelines, all the bylaws in the community, and all of those provide great flexibility, where they basically know they're buying into a multi-use, residential type development, of which is going to be changing over time. That's what they all buy into. I mean, just like the concept in the master plan in 2006, there's a sense of generally kind of where things are going to go. It's just that it's a concept, because all that we know is there's 1,018 units and they're going to be built in this area. And there are even parts, if you look at that original master plan concept, it doesn't even include the additional lot that was put in later. So again, this is all a concept plan, and as it progresses, you guys get to approve it. If anybody in the development has any issues, come before you and tell you if they have any issues.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
But I think that this comments that you're making about the master plan being generalistic, it's not correct. Because the master plan is a document, even though it can be changed, and it does change by virtue of the applicant coming in to the planning board and changing it. When you look at the developer agreement, between the developer agreement and town, the master plan is kind of like the Bible that you go by. Now, can you change it? Yes, you can. You can change anything by coming into the planning board and doing that. But when people buy and trying to be open and fully disclose everything that's going on, and like some of the things that were in the original master plan were, in fact, I mean, I was pulling out of the sky that there was going to be sidewalks on every road in South Peak. They originally did that. That was in the master plan. There's not a sidewalk there. Okay, so all I'm looking to do is make sure that this master plan is a document. It's a living document that goes with that property, and it's further related in the developer agreement. And if you look through all of these documents, they really relate, and they speak about the master plan and how it's even the town's rules, regulations speak about the master plan and how important it is, and you're supposed to live by it, and it's not supposed to change it. So not supposed to be, well, I won't say change unless it comes to the planning board.
But that's
So I mean, I think that's all I'm saying, is that the people that are us up here and the people that are over there and the people in town, it can affect by either virtue of water, traffic's a big one, and that's probably one of the ones I will probably bring up next, because I think some of the traffic that's coming, I don't know that it's all South Peak's problem, but the traffic studies that were done back in 2006, they either something's changed in the town or South Peak, or and and the traffic in town is not great. We all know that. From Loon Mountain on down, and then I just look at it today, for example, and think, so there's 1,018 units, you basically got 800 left to do. Between what Loon Mountain's doing with the ski area, between what you want to do over here, I mean, it's gonna be heck to get in and out of anywhere, okay, so when I look at a master plan, I think that kind of thing should be addressed. Not everybody knows, and I don't expect that a traffic study in 2006 is gonna be able to anticipate everything that goes on that's gone on between now and 2023. You know, so,
17 years is a long time.
right, so, and that's why the planning board has the ability to request studies at any time during any part of the development. And that's, you know, one of the things that, because we've resolved the water issue pretty much, as long as it goes according to plan. One of the things I think that should be next should be a revised traffic study, to see how it all affects the traffic within the town. Because that's one of the biggest problems that you hear about in town now, is the traffic.
So
And I don't think that's all you,
can I give
also
you, can I give you a suggestion? It's gonna hurt me elsewhere, right?
it never hurts.
But I understand we're in front of you for another project, which is another master plan. We have not fulfilled our obligation on a traffic study for that project. We anticipate the planning board asking for a traffic study on that project. We're already looking at what our options are for that. We did, however, understand that when this was permanent, we fulfilled those obligations and those were confirmed. Lincoln is forever evolving. 17 years, it is gonna continue to change.
Too bad.
And I think that as it's changing, we share in all of the issues that are coming up: traffic, employee housing, open space, sidewalks, Main Street as a whole. So we're doing that because we have much more going on that I think the board is familiar with than just South Peak. And I can say that when we commit for other projects, we expect to have to contribute and continue to do our fair share. That being said, we have fulfilled obligations with South Peak and we're gonna continue to abide by those. And with the 795 more units, that's a lot more traffic. That's been the unit number 1,018. If we substantially change it and came in and said, we'd like to change that, and we want to do it, you know, we've already got 800 built, now we want to do a 400 unit hotel, that would trigger, wait a minute, this is a total change of the project. And that I understand coming with all the perspective. But at the moment, we want to continue to operate just in conjunction with the town to continue to bite off more of the master plan and the feeling of what it is each year as we go. And then as that's happening, a lot of the basis that we understand, bigger developments, it's going to continue to fund additional revenue towards infrastructure. You know, for example, if another 300 units were built and we're still less than half of where the total build out was, you know, that would say 500 units. I know taxes in a typical house up there might be 22,000. You're doing quick ballparks. That's $11 million a year in annual taxes. Every time there's a permit fee for water, you know, when that comes in and someone's putting in all these bathrooms, I look at the double vanities and smile that they're paying another fee because they want to share the sink. So these are items that I see as that's great revenue for the town, that as we're building it out and things continue, it's gonna also allow good, positive revenue that hopefully the town can use in a productive manner to make sure we're all prepared, so we don't run into a situation at the end of our development because it took so long that we didn't watch everything else develop around us and say, well, wait a minute, guys, we always knew what we were doing.
Well, unfortunately, back in 2006, the town had, I mean, and it still does have parking along Main Street. The town doesn't have any say as to when the Department of Transportation may come in and say, there'll be no more parking along Main Street, and it could just be a thoroughfare out there, as far as, you know, some people are concerned. It is now, but it's not, because we still have some of that parking along Main Street. I would hate to see that lost for some of the smaller businesses that are along Main Street. Not your problem, I understand, you've got a development over there, but, you know, I mean, things like that are what the town and the planning board is supposed to look at.
And we're working with that, and we're not just focused on South Peak.
I'm gonna let him talk.
But we're not just focused on South Peak, so I'd hate to see that parking go too. I mean, we bought the village shops. We have other real estate on Main Street as well. We have several parcels and we're gonna continue to look at other avenues, both from a employer basis and employee housing basis. So we don't want this to be, oh, we've got our permits in South Peak, we're all set. We want to help on those other things. But that being said, we also know we've got a South Peak. We want to continue to develop it in a good manner and work very closely with the town to do it such that we are helping with monitoring, documenting, and cleaning up, which would be otherwise like my 9-bedroom house.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then in the master plan now, I think it was in the master plan. It says, for example, that the road that goes back from South Peak to Bloom, was only meant to be used for Bloom Mountain coming back and forth. And in the master plan, I believe it said that it was meant to be used as a thoroughfare through. I personally don't care about what's going on too much over there. Once you get all of your, ducks in a row, with your master plan and all your updates on your densities and stuff like that you want to do. My concern is that the town is still having problems. And somehow they've got to be addressed. And I don't know if it gets addressed through town working with South Peak and I'm not saying you're the full, I'm not just picking just on you. I'm saying that there's a whole lot of other parts that go in here. You're here tonight, so.
Well, we're here because we're a partner of the town. We have tried to, since we bought this, I sat in front of this board almost 2 years ago and said, just give me a chance to do everything I say I'm gonna do. That I've been able to do everything we said we've done. We're a partner of the town, we're working together. We understand South Peak's fulfilled a lot of the obligations that were put in front of them back in 2006. That doesn't mean that we're not trying to help contribute as things progress. But it also, we've got our plan, just as other small developments have their plan. We just happen to be large. And as things go on, we're more regulatory, we're more team-oriented than I think most developments are in general. So we're not gonna change from that. And me as the owner I'm extremely active in this project. That this is not something that we're an absentee out of town, we are vested. So as we talk about different things and there's different formats in which all the developments, not just South Peak, can look, including some of our own, village shops, rapids, etc., can come together and say, hey, we've got a plan to make, we want to do underground wires on Main Street, do more parking, we want to better sidewalks, ADA accessibility. There's so many things that we'd love to contribute towards. Overall master, when I say overall traffic plan for the whole town, if we were proposed with, hey, we'd like you to contribute, and South Peak puts in 50,000 and this puts in this, if everyone comes together, we are more than happy to work and be a partner of the town in the greater community.
Right, and I think that's great. I'm hoping that's what you're gonna do, and I would hope that other developers would join on with you, because if they come up Main Street or go down through Main Street at the end of the day, and they can't get back into South Peak, they're not gonna be happy either.
They're not gonna buy,
And
then we're not gonna have any issue with.
they're not,
So it's
well,
not gonna-
true,
Well, I
that's
think Joe
very
wants
true,
to
that's
weigh
my
in.
concern, huh?
Joe wants to weigh in.
Also, for your information, I don't know if you know this, about another 200-300 units being built at Forest Ridge. I don't know if you're aware of that fact.
Yeah.
If you should have to do a traffic study, like you were saying, for the town, South Peak, you might want to weigh in them, because that affects them also. They dump almost within eighth of a mile or quarter mile from your entrance, going to South Peak, right at the Forest Ridge. That's 200-300 more units than the place up there. Plus the development that you want to put in down at the old Mill Pond.
And I think that
If
there's
it's
more,
gotta come together, everybody can get it, hands into the till, so to speak. Contribute, so for the long term, it benefit all of you together if you do it that way.
and I think that if the town was, when we're here, one thing I think I wanna stress too is when we're here to talk about what is our agreement versus what we wanna see, I wear two hats, right? We have a lot of property in town, we care about what's happening. I also have to say, all right, we have a development agreement, we've reinstated it, that's why I've got my attorney right here, and everyone's there. I think that there's a bigger picture here that is getting a lot of developments. I know we would spearhead this and put money, so we don't have to raise the money. I think a bunch of developers come together. I know we'd be paying the lion's share of it to say, let's look at traffic in general, because if we can't get a solution, it's
Right.
not gonna help us, and we know that. It's not gonna help the Rapids. It's not gonna help the other buildings on Main Street we own. And it's ultimately, everyone's success is a success for not just Lincoln, but South Peak. So if we can create a format in which we can all get together, start looking at things like, okay, we know we're in the high 60s% of sewer capacity now. We know that an 80% is the trigger in which we have to do something. That, let's start to think, that's 10 years out. What is our game plan, right? I am thrilled to be involved in all of those conversations. What I am asking that we don't look at is things that we've done, we've confirmed, we've fulfilled our obligations. We don't want to be, I'm not gonna
Go back.
we're not gonna go backwards and say, wait a minute, this, in the new developments that we do, we wanna do it in a manner that we're asking the right question, we're gonna do it right, we're gonna be transparent, and we're gonna document it, right? And we're gonna help doing whatever we can. But we don't wanna go backwards on it, especially when we're talking about projects that are in front of the town that are an 8-lot, really 1-lot subdivision, right? Lot line adjustments. We've got a lot going on over there that is only gonna benefit the town, meaning additional revenue that is, frankly, I think a lot of less burden at times, because I'm amazed how much I'm in that neighborhood and I see no one other than the workers. So.
Somebody's.
Right, there's a few, so, point being, I think there's a lot of benefits to that, but I don't think we need to discuss the benefits of South Peak or the negatives of South Peak when we already have a plan in place. I think that there's needs to be avenues in which we all can, and South Peak should and will contribute to overall traffic studies, overall streetscapes, permitting, all the, fundamental water, sewer. That's why we've contributed to the water tank. Instead of doing our own and doing it much faster, we're like, no, let's work with the town. And that's our mentality, and it will continue to be our mentality.
Totally agree with you.
The, one thing though, Mark, I think is that anything that and since we're talking about the master plan here. So we're gonna go by the 2006 master plan, that's my understanding. That you're saying we're gonna just keep the 2006 master plan, not revised at all? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct, we're going, we are, and I'm gonna share that we may have a difference of opinion on this, that. So,
You
so,
think so?
so we believe we are operating underneath that when we're changing and we believe this to the point of where, when they would change from the townhouses or condos that were down near the river to single family lots, or we're keeping with the character and feel of that master plan. That when we restated the master plan was active, we don't want to go backwards there. That's not where we want to spend our time. I feel like I've spent more money on my own consultants about master plans, that I'd rather be putting that money towards a traffic study that would help the whole town. That I don't want to go backwards here. I want to keep looking forward. I want to help document things, because I do agree that accounting of South Peak, as well as I think a lot of different things, needs some work. But that we'll continue to do. And that was in reference to some questions I know that you had on bedroom counts and whatnot. Because we want to make sure that the town's planning properly. The last thing we want as a development is to say, wait, we don't have the capacity down the road. And we're like, come on, we always knew this was coming, so we want to do whatever we can to help be a good communicated teammate.
Right, and one of the things when you're trying to plan, and you're going by the master plan, for example, and I pick on the fire side, but the fire side was originally supposed to be, I think, eight lots, was it 8 lots up there?
Yeah, whatever.
Right, so that would have been 8 family units, and now it's gonna be 41. So when you look at that type of planning, that, in my mind, as a person that sits on the planning board, I look and say, okay, so how did that change affect the town? All of a sudden now there's 41 more water sewer, 41 more water sewer cars that are coming out onto here when there was only gonna be 8. So when I look at that, I think, okay, so maybe what South Peak should have done is changed your master plan and said, change some of the densities where you're gonna have different densities now.
We don't
To
know
make-
it though.
Huh?
We don't know it. So like, if I knew this, right? How much I pull my hair out, I'm good to deal with. I'm good. DEP, I've got blue, right? I've got so many factors. I've got the economy, like what is gonna be selling, townhouse versus a, you know, flat condo or a single family lot. There's so many factors that a master plan would have no effective benefit if every time you made any small alteration, in my opinion, small alteration, you came back in and redid your own master plan, you essentially have nothing other than a traditional piece of land in which you'd be going back for permanent,
But you could be looking at densities, for example.
which we are. That's why we have the 1018.
So if I may ask a couple questions here, so I guess to take a step back, I've been through master plan process on a bunch of large projects like this. So I'm pretty familiar with how this typically works over the course of many years. So I guess I would ask, kind of think about what the board's job was back in 2006 when this original master plan was approved and what the purpose of that was. Well, the purpose of that, the developer came in and asked for a master plan approval. Why? Well, they wanted a long-term approval for really three things. They wanted a density vesting approval, so they knew how many units they could build on this site. And on the town side, the town needed to analyze and assess the impact of those number of units as it relates to traffic, okay?
Or
And-
water or
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So item one is density as it relates to the overall density of the project as it relates to traffic. Second item is vesting for infrastructure. So, because that's an important thing for a developer to have in their pocket for a project that, you don't want to get into a project and then find out in 5 years, oh, the town needs a $25 million wastewater plant upgrade and the developer's got to contribute 10 million to that in order to do the project. That doesn't work. So there has to be, for the developer to benefit from a master plan approval, there has to be some vesting there for that. And it's really the planning board's job at that point. When they bless that master plan, it's like, okay, the town is looking ahead. And they're saying, look, regardless of whatever else goes on in town between whenever this is built, and some places put a sunset on master plans, many do not, they're just there. There isn't often a lot of forethought, but the intent is that the town's approving this, so whatever else happens, we've accounted for this, right? So the town has accounted for the project. Now, to Mark's point, that things change over time. And the whole purpose of having to continually come back for site plan approval, subdivision approval, for everything else, from my perspective, the board's job then is to look at that and go, okay, the overall performance standards that were in the master plan. Traffic, is this within that approval or is this beyond that approval? Water, is this, hey town, is this within that approval or beyond that approval? Sewer, same thing, within that, beyond it. Those are the three big questions that a master plan is looking to answer. Also, is the density there generally the same as the master plan? Is there anything that's not conforming? So to Mark's point, 20-story hotel. Wait a minute, the fire department doesn't have a ladder to go that tall. So it's out of the question, right? Forget about zoning ordinance for a minute. Just that's out of the question. So I think to the point of trying to be to that level of detail about, well, we got density here that we're shifting over here a little bit. Well, that's not really master planning. That's you're coming in for site plan application like we did for Fireside. All the abutters are being noticed. It's noticed at the post office. It's noticed at town hall. It's noticed on the web. So there is plenty of opportunity for people to see when something is coming in. But the overall approval is to give the developer that investing so they have some assurance the project can move forward and for the town to understand this is what's coming. Everybody shakes the hand at the end of that master plan approval, and that's what was done. So I guess I personally disagree with the level of detail you're talking about here. From my experience working on several big master plans, things change over time, but is it consistent with the overall master plan? I would argue everything that we've done is absolutely consistent with what was approved.
Well, we can agree to disagree.
That's what I mentioned before.
I think
Well,
Joe.
very short, I mean,
Joe wants to weigh in.
yeah.
Like Paul's talking about increasing density here, increasing density there. The overall density of the project is not changing. That is according to the contract they have in town. Density will stay the same, the traffic will not increase more. I have more units here than over there. It matters maybe more traffic faster than anticipated.
Well,
I haven't. Am I wrong in correcting that? I can't correct it. You don't agree with me. This is my opinion. The overall density of the project is not changing. The the traffic flow coming out of there will not be changed, the same number of units, be flying people coming in and out. But you're referring to more density in this one small phase than the other, but the overall density will not change at all.
Well, but the density could change if they build 6-bedroom houses versus hotel.
It could, but that's minuscule compared to.
And I also would ask that. One of the reasons we wanna keep coming to the planning board, and we're required to keep coming to the planning board, is to continue to give updates on what's going on. That when this master plan was put into place, it was already a subdivision of 60 some odd lots for big. Big bedroom, lot of fixtures, expensive houses up on Crooked Mountain Road. Those are where those first houses were built. I bring that up because we wanna try to give, we don't wanna see, we know this capacity today. I mean, we see, the minutes were just about approving another project, it's a large project. We've seen hotels being proposed on small sites that have a tremendous amount of sewer allocation that's now needed. We don't wanna see, where today, we're here saying we all can agree there's ample sewer today. If we think that, hey, there's been some bigger houses there, let's have South Peak be a good partner, try to research what it is. If there's anything that should be allocated on the town's front, by all means, we wanna help and participate, so you guys can better make decisions on other developments as well. We don't wanna keep anything a secret, we wanna be, here's what we have. We wanna make sure that there's enough seats that when someone comes in and, you know, that when they're skiing, they can have their bag lunch or buy chicken fingers, whatever it may be. That being the case, we're gonna keep coming to the planning board. When you see Fireside, you're gonna be able to look at it and say, this is how many bedrooms, this is how many fixtures. You're gonna get all those permit fees, get all those tax dollars, but also be able to adjust. We hope that the town is adjusting their expectations on sewer, continuing as we go. So there's never that aha moment where we're focusing on what we're doing. All these projects get built and someone says, oh, wait a minute, we don't have enough. Because if there's not enough allocation, we'd hope that developments like the Rapids changing or other hotels or other big developments are gonna be contributing towards it, just as South Peak has contributing towards infrastructure that we've done in the past, and we have $1.5 million continuing to contribute now. So as far as working together, we're 100% aligned.
Paul?
I don't think anyone's debating that working together is not a good thing, it's always been good for the town. They used to have what was it, the Route 112 council, where there was a lot of developers, builders got together, and that's how the town actually got to build this infrastructure up. The developers ponied up money to help develop water and sewer needs, and in return, they receive tap fees. So they worked that, you know, and I applaud your willingness to get something like that going forward, things like traffic, sewer, and all that stuff. But as far as the density goes, the density does make a difference, because if Fireside was only gonna be an 8-unit project and now it's a 41-unit project, that may not change what comes out onto this road out here, but it changes what comes out into the development. And that's why you'll see, and in some of the, and I believe it's the master plan, and I think, I'm not sure about the developer agreement, but it speaks to things like densities not changing. Density is a very important part of the master plan.
Can you show me where? on the
And I
master
just don't have
plan-
it right here, right now.
There is nowhere on the master plan that shows any units being built anywhere of any size or shape other than what's already there. Master plan. And
Oh, no, it's not, no.
there's nowhere it says this is gonna be eight lots in this area where there's now.
It showed a low dense, for example, you can take a look on the density plan for 2006, and you will see, and it was brought up by the town engineer, Ray Corbett, that night, that the density for Fireside was a low density, and that this project was different.
So, to your point about the specific density of Fireside, that was addressed in the site plan review. That's the purpose of site plan review, is to address, okay, do we have a safe intersection? Is there adequate turning radius to get fire trucks in? Is there adequate site distance to get cars out? That is all part of the site plan review process, not the master plan process.
I'd be the first to admit that I failed that night, because I didn't add 1-to-1. Had I added 1-to-1, I would have asked you, hey, look, this is supposed to be a low density place and it's a high density, and how's that going to affect traffic flow, or how's that
Well,
going to?
and obviously what
any
it
of that?
it was the remainder of the board as well, and I. think
Oh, yeah, I mean, but you know,
We talked through
we
that.
failed that night. I mean, we actually approved something that night that we probably,
I would disagree. I think that your approved submitted is in keeping with the master plan. But Paul, I wanna get to the point where I have this feeling that as much as we're gonna get along and see eye to eye on maybe 90% of what we're talking about,
we are.
these items, there's gonna be a few items that I don't think, no matter how much I keep paying these consultants to come with me, I don't think they're gonna convince you. So I'm just saying that I know that we're at a spot where I believe we are absolutely acting in the master plan. We've had more meetings that I am at a spot where I skipped the one today because I felt like I was reoccurring. I was like, I don't need to be at this one. I've heard it so many times. That being the case, I wanna, if the conversation is about talking about how do we handle traffic, how do we work about sewer long-term, how do we do all that? I'm all ears, but I'm not all ears about going backwards to 06 and opening back up my master plan. That's one thing I have in the books. I wanna look at the future of other projects because we have so much other things going on that we're gonna contribute, we're gonna be there to help. That's where I'm there.
And I know you don't believe this, but I'll be so glad when that tank goes online and is able to provide all of the water.
I know that.
For South Peak needs, and that things like, because the people I talk to in town, I hear a lot of, and it's not everybody, obviously, but I hear a lot of, man, South Peak's building over there, we're building hotels, we can't get on Main Street, we can't go to the grocery store because there's nothing in there, so they're blaming it all on the development. You're
But I
part of
think
it, but also the hotels and everything else, so those are the people who vote. Those are the people who vote for the ordinances, changes in the ordinances. But the second homeowners don't get a vote. So, you know, in order to try and keep them kind of happy and voting so that people can develop like you or the hotels. You have to try and find where that calming effect is so they can operate their lives on a daily basis without being too disrupted as well. And that's to me, that's the point of the whole thing is people who want to develop need to be able to develop, but you get over here, you get the local population, and if you disrupt them too much, they're gonna start voting in strict ordinances and this and that and the other thing, which is gonna hamper everything that people want to do. So that's where I come from. It's not a matter of whether I like you or don't like you. People that talk on the street, the people I talk to, I try to relate their concerns. And that's truly where I come from. What you have over there is yours. But when it comes out onto the main street, when it affects everything else, that's different.
And we're on board that, to your point, what we have over there is, I'm gonna say, what we have over there is, we know what we've got. We're gonna continue to operate under that. We're gonna keep being a good partner. We're gonna regulate it. We're gonna keep an eye on it. What we're doing to make sure that the building happens over there in strict guidelines, we're not necessarily doing that on other parcels we bought in town. If, it's a totally different, down in Main Street, we're buying things that it's not part of South Peak. We don't have to make sure that the siding is the exact color. That this, if they wanna change the color, the front door, that's a little easier to do. I would say that as a whole, we would welcome the opportunity to get involved on a bigger scale to help address the greater public's concerns about traffic, sewer, water. We have clearly demonstrated that we're on board to help with the water issue. We are absolutely concerned about traffic, and we want to look at different alternatives from, understanding, is there a better transit system? Is there different, but these items don't have any direct correlation to our math. That's where I want to shut the book for a while on the master plan. If we're going to deviate and come to a big change, we understand. And every time we come back, even if it's a lot line adjustment, we're going to be in front of an open public hearing here at the planning board. So I'm looking to be able to say, okay, consultants, if you will, let's focus on these small subdivisions and get these projects going that are well within our count. We're going to get you these updated counts, continue to get you more information and document things. So the town has the records and everyone's in a line, line on what it is. And then on a separate note, let's try to, we'll be thrilled to be here and contribute to other different bigger picture projects that we think could be beneficial to everybody.
So if I could ask, would you be willing, I mean, the planning board during any application. Can say, we think we need a traffic study. Would you be willing to commit tonight to say,
We
You
can
know.
review, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I can commit, but I'm
and
speaking of,
take, look, I'm not saying this all you, I understand.
Well, I just say, as its legal representative, under the town's agreement, it says he's met all his obligations with respect to traffic, period, end of sentence. He has met all mitigation, there was mitigation required in 2006. The developer did that mitigation, and the town has confirmed that that mitigation was sufficient all the way to full build out. Period. He is under zero obligation. In my view, the town cannot force him in respect to any development at South Peak to do another traffic study at this point in time. The degree that it has already been done.
Yeah, let's ask town council.
Well, just so I can direct Jason to it. So Jason, when you take a look at the documents, specifically look at the development agreement, it's at the registry as of August of 2006. We're under paragraph 3. It talks about the undertakings and commitments of the developer. It says that it must construct, complete, and contribute to intersectional improvements and other traffic mitigation measures. There's a schedule. And then in the next section on the document under the town acknowledgements, it says the town acknowledges that the developer's off-site traffic improvements as set forth in the schedule adequately and sufficiently mitigate all off-site traffic impacts that will be generated by the project through complete build-out. This is the town's development agreement of 06. And then in 2019, the town did a confirmation agreement. This is before Mark was even on the scene. It indicated that all of the obligations in section 3 of the agreement, once again, traffic, have been fulfilled and satisfied in full. And then in 2021, the town once again stated that the requirements of section 3 of the development agreement have been in fact completed. So I read that, as a matter of fact, I don't know how else you can read it, say as part of the master plan, just as John, the engineer, is confirming, there were certain things that were agreed to. When it comes to traffic, we got it covered. We looked out in the future. We looked at 1,018 units. There is no additional traffic obligations. Same with respect to water and sewer. There was a plan. Now, that doesn't mean Mark can't agree to it. It doesn't mean that.
we'll wait for Jason's response and then I'll chime in with what I'm thinking.
So that's my read of it. So we're all turning to you now, Jason, to see if you have a reaction. Not that we're putting you on the spot, but they're asking. You're on.
That's all right. I was trying to actually look at it because I have a lot of different things open and spread on my desk and open online as well, but I had to get to that particular one. And I'm currently looking at the amendment, and I do read number 2, each of the CDP undertakings and commitments set forth in section 3 of the agreement have been satisfied in full. That seems pretty clear to me. So I guess my response would be, unless there is some material change in circumstances that would trigger a statutory ability to deviate from that, which I don't think is the case, but obviously I would look at any information that I do tend to agree with what I have heard, that based on those documents that were signed, that those obligations do not exist. However, I suppose as the dialogue continues, that doesn't mean that a developer in a town cannot attempt to work together proactively. So I would follow up with that by saying, and I think, Paul, this goes to some of your concerns. The planning board would have the ability, obviously subject to appeal by the developer, if it feels that any particular site plan application either is too inconsistent with the general plan of the master plan or doesn't stand on its own merit, to vote to deny it. I think that given the circumstances that have arisen in this case, the planning board could choose either of those two bases. But any approval for any site plan, I think, would function as a functional, whether you want to call it amendment or revision or acceptance of an amendment or revision to that master plan. I agree with the point there too, that because each of these can come for site plan review, and that there wasn't an original huge site plan approval that would allow the developer to essentially just build at its own discretion, unless it phased out somehow or timed out, that the protection is there. If a site plan comes in and it is different enough from what you perceive to be the master plan, arguably, and perhaps one or more of the three gentlemen sitting there would disagree with this part, but if it's different enough, you could decide that it's different enough from what was agreed to, that further study is warranted. But I do agree that these documents suggest, and I'll close with this, that unless something pretty significant comes to pass, that those are not obligations, but would be cooperative endeavors.
In the effort of cooperation, again, if we close the book on this master plan discussion and we said, let's have another discussion, when any developers in town are going to come together, contribute, help fund traffic studies, master planning for the town, streetscaping, parking, discussions on employee housing, workforce housing, affordable housing, all those are things that we care about and we're continuing to try to be a part of. So that is something I'm not here to say, no, we're not doing a traffic study, and I'm simply listening to them say, it's not because we have to, but we want to, we're gonna continue to be a town, good development partner. And let's focus on that as we move forward and not be harping on the master plan.
And I agree with what Jason has said, but you've taken on and the water issue between you and the town, and you've resolved that, pretty well. But I think there's a big question about the traffic. And I think it's apparent just going up down Main Street on any foliage weekend or any ski weekend or whatever. And that's gonna be something that you're gonna want to in the future, or before that,
That's what I want to do right now.
address. And I think that when Jason said that, Jason, how do you justify the difference between what was done in 2006 and how do you substantiate that in today's picture? So in 2006, I said this is what the traffic was gonna be. And I'm not looking at the traffic at South Peak, I'm looking at the traffic it was gonna generate onto Main Street. And now it's all changed. I realize that they haven't changed the 2019 number, I think that's what it was, right? 18, I was giving you one. That, they haven't changed that number, but, no one can see through that crystal ball and say, uh-oh, we forgot this or this didn't change. So how do you address that problem? Because the problem is the traffic. It's not whether or not South Peak is the only developer who's affecting it. But they are part of it. So maybe something was left out. Maybe, for example, the back road that goes between Loon and South Peak. So if that's being used more, maybe it will be dumping more traffic down on this end of Main Street. Maybe there's something they did, that wasn't planned, like such as that, because it wasn't planned to be used as an interconnection between it. It was not supposed to do that. Do I care whether you use it or not? No. But what I care about is how it's gonna dump out onto Main Street and how it's gonna affect that. So those are the types of things that, when I look at it, something might have been, it's 20-something years.
Can I give you a suggestion?
Yeah.
And this is from a lot of towns I work in. I have towns that we've done development for 10 years, where 10 years ago, they weren't even concerned about, say, traffic or sewer. And I get approved and we build the project and it's done. Now things change. So when I come in for a new project, it's no longer like, I'm not coming in and applying for a permit or a master plan based off the 06 now for the Rapids. I have to come today. And when I come today, just as every other project that comes in front of this board, the town should be aware of. We now have a traffic issue. And I can assure you the traffic is up here enough myself. Some of the days at peak foliage, I'm in South Peak and I don't see hardly any cars. Yet I can't even get off Main Street, meaning it's not a, so as much as South Peak's that 100-pound gorilla that people love to, that it's.
It's only during ski season.
And what I would say is that we wanna look at it as, we wanna help contribute to understanding the best traffic means. We wanna be a good partner. We wanna do all that in good faith as we all share the benefits of having it done properly. And that way the town has enough information that when new projects come in front of them, that everybody's contributing. And I'm willing, although I'm not obligated to contribute to traffic studies and different solutions, we're willing to because we share in the benefits of that. And also we have the same fears, but we can't control what happens with the other developments on Main Street. The planning board can. And that's why looking at South Peak and looking what's happening and what happened in 06 isn't going to be able to help us get ahead as much as how do we get a plan in which everybody can contribute to make it a benefit for everybody, the locals and the people that are coming and helping with.
So how does that work, OJ? I mean, how does the town enlist the help of all of the people who are developing the hotels, the South Peak, the whatever else is going on? How does that get done so that, I mean, to me, traffic's a pretty big concern. I mean, I would hate to lose these parking spaces on Main Street. There's a lot of mom and pop places that really rely on those
And I get the traffic is your big concern because it's been a topic of conversation,
for a while now.
like on everything. The thing is, we're here tonight to talk about the South Peak master plan. We wrote a letter or whatever, confirmation in 2019 that said they have fulfilled their obligation regarding several things, but traffic being one of them. I think if you want to pursue that, bring that up at either a planning board meeting or a board of selectmen's meeting, and have that be a conversation on its own. It's not related to South Peak.
No,
Right?
that's tough,
Maybe
no.
we'll come up when they come forward with the Rapids project. Okay, because
We're on board. We're on board to come for another meeting. We will bring our consultants. We have ideas. We've paid master planners. We've spent a lot of time on this. We bought other parcels that are here, right? Very close to this building we sit in tonight. That if we want to close the book right now on tonight's master plan, and then if the open minutes, someone says, hey, we'd like to have a meeting where we want to invite developers to come in, contribute and talk about this, we will be here. And I'm gonna then have my consultants here to help, hey, this is what we've recommended. And this is great firms that I'm paying the bill on. So we will partner and do that. But to OJ's point, I don't want it to be associated with the master plan. I want to be able to say that was there. Now let's focus on what's next. And I'm ready to make that happen.
Paul, if I may, this is Jason online. There are 4 tools that any planning board has to deal with both larger scale general concerns, but also individual site plan applications that come in. And those are perhaps in an ascending order of seriousness. Reasonable conditions that could be placed on the approval of a site plan, both prior and subsequent. Denials if it doesn't seem to jive with the LUPO or whatever the ordinance is in place in whatever town. And then 2 other things that are larger scale. And I know this from working with other resort-based towns, are moratoriums can go in place that halt development while things are fixed and figured out. But the other piece, which is where developers, I think, could be a helpful asset, is the town. And it's sort of ironic because we're talking about the master plan for South Peak, but towns have the ability to update their master plan too. And that through statute does in fact originate in the planning board. And just based on sort of the conversation I've heard at this meeting, it may be, it may not be, because it may be a task that the town doesn't feel like taking on at this time. Because consultants are hired for those. There are folks out there in the world that their job is to help towns update their master plans as far as what they envision for the future of development, et cetera, in the town for the next 10, 20 years, whatever it may be. And given some of the concerns based on the scope of development Paul, it may be that that is something that is food for thought for you and the rest of the planning board going forward. And if the timing is right to start that process now and have South Peak and the other developers be involved in that through whether it be committees or charrettes or whatever it may be. So some of that is more applicable to South Peak's site plans as they come in, and some of it is more applicable to your larger concerns. There is overlap between your concerns with South Peak and your larger concerns. But I think the reality, based on where we are at now, and as OJ pointed out with regard to the 19, we can't use South Peak coming in to be the sort of panacea for all development concerns for the town. It just, that would not pass muster if they brought legal challenges. But they're reasonable conditions and other things that can go on with site plans as they come in to keep things on track from what was expected and what the ultimate density and green space requirements are. But reasonable movement within those is going to be in the end permitted if it required a legal challenge. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but my hope is that by saying all of that, it addresses a lot of the minor or not minor, but specific concerns with South Peak, but also addresses the larger concerns so that maybe I don't have to say anything else going forward in the meeting, and that it really hopefully addresses those different concerns. So that's it.
So one of the things from the memorandum from the technical review committee was that they suggested that that the planning board formally vote on the matter of accepting the 2006 master plan. Also, there was not did we ever find out whether there was a site plan approval for South Peak? Remember it? Wasn't it? Who was it that said that we couldn't find an overall? Was there a site plan that was accepted for the original master plan in 2006?
Probably more than we found an original master.
The stuff is still there on the back table.
Right.
The boxes, all that stuff. Stuff is laid out flat. It's the stuff. They're incorporated to.
Right. But
Text. I did not find anything about sidewalks, for example. I don't know where that is. We keep referring to the sidewalks.
Yeah, I can get that. Once I look through the
Hold on, Paul, Joe wants you to check.
oh,
I was the one that mentioned it. I signed on the original document with Pat Romfrey. So that's the, wonder who was on it, who was there, I was there with it. I helped sign that with Pat Romfrey and the rest of the board, we're all on it together. What happened to the documents, that I can't attest to.
so then the technical review committee did make that recommendation. And it said that we recommend that each proposal brought forth by the South Peak LLC on June 28th, 2023 be benchmarked against 2006 master plan. That the full weight of the town's land use ordinance and policies be applied to each phase of proposal, which is pretty much what we do anyway. But do we have to accept the 2006 master plan, re-accept that? Is that
I
what?
think we need to have to affirm that, yes, this is what we accepted in 2006, or vote no. Or Jason, if I may, could we also vote that maybe there've been enough changes that a new master plan is warranted?
So ultimately, don't view me as being flip here, but you all, anybody on that board could choose to make any motion that they feel is appropriate. The technical review committee's opinion was based on the fact that there were questions surrounding the 2006 master plan. That is not necessarily an opinion by the technical review committee that the 2006 master plan is invalid, not valid, not proper, not the proper benchmark, but that because it was such a significant area of inquiry, confusion, and concern, that a vote by the board would help clarify that, both for the planning board going forward, but also for the developer, so that both entities are on the same footing going forward, knowing what they're working from. Answer that specific question, you could add to that motion that some amendment is required. I think you would get opposition to that based on the documents, et cetera, that were done as recently as 19 and 21. But you have, just because a board perceives there could be a challenge to its decision, I can't. It's not appropriate for an attorney to counsel a board to not make a motion and vote in a certain way because they're afraid that there might be an appeal. I can say that my opinion is that there would be a valid basis to challenge a required amendment, but I can't say that that would ultimately succeed in the end. I think Attorney Lick there would agree with me that when these types of disputes arise, you can never predict the ultimate outcome. And the reason attorneys make agreements and deals with each other is try to avoid the risk and save time and money. So bottom line is, I think you can make a vote in the affirmative to accept or reaffirm the 2006 master plan. I think you can make a vote in the affirmative to require amendments there too. I guess if you do that, I would say that you should be very clear in what type of amendment you actually want, because a generic motion just to make an amendment would not be helpful to anybody, I don't think, because then they wouldn't know what to possibly do. So again, the technical review committee's recommendation was simply to just accept 2006. And then when each site plan comes in, you can view it on its own. And if it either is too far afield from what you would have expected based on the master plan, or even if it's consistent with it, because prior applications change the overall density. And so 6 site plan applications from now, the remaining density or remaining water usage or remaining open space, whatever the issue is, doesn't actually exist, so as to allow that 6th or 7th or whatever site plan application from now, because minor adjustments along the way sort of sucked up that availability, then you can simply make a denial of that site plan if you're operating on 2006 and everybody remains on the same page that these are general requirements that we're going to fit within. There may be a change from 10 here to 15 here and 40 here to 20 here. And as long as those are within the language, I'll refer to comes from Supreme Court cases that analyze zoning ordinances and variants, and it talks about the spirit of the ordinance, right? And so I think what makes sense here is to keep with the spirit of the master plan, but also make sure that every aspect of the LUPO is vetted appropriately when you make your decision. So I apologize, another long-winded answer, but obviously this is an important issue for the planning board, important, I assume, for the developer as well. And I think the idea is to try and get it just right.
Well,
So if we were going to accept the 2006 master plan, I would at least like to see the document in its entirety, because if you take a look at what Carol has up there, I think we should have a document that says, here's the 2006 master plan, and actually have it. Right now, we've got a culmination of a whole bunch of different things. So at a minimum, I would say we want to have, the town wants to have a 2000 copy of the 2006 master plan. It's an entirety that the developer agrees with, and that the town agrees, or the planning board agrees with what it is. That's the first thing I have. The second thing is that when we're looking at a total of units, the 1,018 units, it was 1,018 4-bedroom units. So is the control over the 1,018, or is the control over the basis of design total gallons, which OJ sometimes refers to? So what is that? So we can all know. Is it, what's the governing factor here? Is it the 1,018 units, or is it the 1,018 units times the 4 bedrooms times the gallonage? So I mean, if we had talked about some of in the earlier parts of 2006 when they did it, they weren't 4-bedroom units. There's some over there that are, maybe Mark has one of the 12-bedroom.
Mark is not bedrooms, he said.
I was just kidding, but you know what I'm saying? So what is the control? Because it sounds to me like even on that number, we should know what it is.
I mean, it's 1,018, they can be any configuration, but they can't exceed what's been allocated for water and sewer.
So there's not, okay, so it's both, it's either 1,018 or it's the gallons, right? It's
guess
just,
It's both.
Okay,
I guess
so this
It's
is the
exactly what
chart
you said.
that I took out of the basis of design, and this colored it so they're easier to read. Okay, and this talks about the water demand, both the residential water demand and the commercial water demand. Talks about how many, number of bedrooms per unit. So you do have, pay attention to the bedrooms, because it could be that you're gonna exceed this capacity.
That was after the master plan was done. So this,
You came back, I think in July, you actually brought a master plan with your comments.
that's right, and I just wanted to mention that the basis of design, when the master plan was created and acknowledged and agreed upon, there was no reference to bedroom count. It was a reference to units. And that's why I want to be clear that I acknowledge that before I bought this 170 units, I'm keeping people to 4 bedrooms and what it is, and that's just generally to be a good partner of the town and work together. That if there's additional flow that the town is worried about, and that we're worried about running up against it, we should make sure that the allocation's higher. Because if we have 1,018 units and we build that out, we can't build that 1,018th unit because we ran out of flow because something was permitted after this master plan. It shouldn't fall on South Peak, it should fall maybe on the Rapids, it hasn't been approved yet for the additional units. I'm calling out some things that are not approved, right? And I would ask that in this process, if there's a separate, not master plan, I mean, with master plan, that was a unit count. It's not, and that was density, and that was all these other aspects that I don't think we need to dive into. On another note, if there's a study that's done, I think that we need to make sure that the allocations are right. Not just with South Peak, but all the properties and all the things that are involved, from Village Shops right down the line, to make sure that we as a town, and this is not me speaking just at South Peak, but all the things that I have going on here, we have the right allocations and we're planning for what will eventually be a maximum capacity. And we don't want to see a moratorium where no one can build or do things. I've seen it happen in other towns where we do a lot of development, and it really hurts the whole community as a whole when no one can update or do things because they run out. So that being said, I agree with Paul's comment that, hey, this is off the 1,018. That after the fact, there's been different times where it says, hey, what's the plans? What's going on? What's here? But we're not looking at it, especially knowing that the tracking of that 1,018 has been challenging, right? Like, there is not a 12-bedroom house, I don't have a 9-bedroom house. So if moving forward in a separate conversation than the master plan conversation, part of the traffic study, there should also be, in my opinion, as a greater community, sewer allotment, water allotment flows. If there's an issue that is beyond South Peak, but it's, hey, we want to know that now, because as things come in front, another hotel, another project, more development, we want to make sure there's gonna, if it was up to me, I'd have an allocation for affordable workforce housing to make sure when there is the opportunity for that to happen, that there's always gonna be allocation, we don't run out of allocation when we know we need all these, there's much more to it. But as far as the master plan, I think it's a separate conversation.
but I don't think it's that simple.
That's
I don't think it's that simple, because OJ has always said that there's 1,018 units times the gallons per bedroom, and that gallon count is, once you reach that, that's when, if you don't have 1,018 units built, say you only have 900 and you've met your gallons use based on the basis of design, then there's no more, you have to come back in and say, okay, we've met our demand, but we're not at our unit count. How do we address that?
Okay.
George, comment.
The first came before, Centex first came before the board, with Grissom, remember that? I don't know if you were on the board yet.
Grissom,
Ed Brisson, yeah, I was.
Okay, they didn't mention, when they made the agreement with the planning board in town, I don't recall if they made anything but gallons or amount of bedrooms. They said they were gonna plan to try 3, maybe more, whatever the market held. This is my recollection, I'm not saying,
Okay.
I'm not saying it's gospel. But my recollection, being on the board when this happened, they didn't mention anything about gallon count and amount of maximum gallons, okay, allocated. This may have happened after, between the select board and the developers. But I don't recall if it having been discussed with the planning board.
You'll look, you will see the basis of design referred to in some other documents, and I don't have all my paperwork here, but it's referred to in the, I believe, the developer agreement. It's referred to in a lot of memos, back and forth from the town to the prior developers about how many gallons they have. Right, and that's what I'm saying. But all it needs to be is some clarity as to what it really is, because what OJ has purported to the planning board about, here's the gallons and what, once we're there, then if they only have 800 units built, they gotta come back in. But Mark's saying, hey, look, I don't wanna be, I think what you're saying is, I don't wanna be held to that gallons count, I'd rather be held to the 1,018.
That's how the
so-
1,018 came about. We weren't looking at it when all the research and all the documents we've combed through to the nth degree, everything we've seen, the 1,018 had to do, it's a direct correlation to the land, how much acreage. It was not about, here's what we think we have for gallons, this is why we think we're doing it. So I guess what I'm getting at is, it's a separate conversation that we're absolutely want to be a part of. We're not up against this 80% right now. We have the capacity, we're approving big projects.
I don't even,
So I'm only saying that I want to be on the record saying, listen, let's talk about that in the future. It doesn't have to do with the master plan. The 1,018 didn't have to do with bedrooms. It had to do with the land, the amount of square footage, then the amount of wetlands that was taken away. So I don't want to see it get convoluted into, oh, this is the bedrooms, this is that. Basis of design and the keeping with the density and the units and the different mix of, it's also inherently impossible to put all single family houses on that lot. Based off of just topography and streets and, so there's a lot of things that are gonna naturally work themselves out. That's why I'm trying to move away from the master plan, big picture conversation and into. Let's talk and have a master plan for the town and make sure everybody, not just South Peak, but every project. Is accurately depicting what they think they're gonna need or what they're not gonna need. Cause if something's not gonna be finished out, we'd like to know that too, to see if it could be reallocated or, whatnot.
well, the town ordinances speak to what needs a master plan and what does. Plan phase development needs a master plan developer agreement. And that's why it's a plan phase development over there, just like, is Forest Ridge have a plan phase development? Yeah, so they have a master plan and a developer agreement. So that's kind of what triggers the master plan thing, but the basis of design, I can assure you, there is a ton of history that goes back behind that between prior developers and the town. And I think that's something that you're gonna come up against somewhere, because
I guess I would argue that that history, while I'm sure it was extensive, really doesn't matter at this point, from the perspective that a gallon number has been established, right? There's a gallon number that's vested, that the town has agreed with South Peak, that this is what's available. So, yep, so at this point in time, again, yep, and so that gallon number is what the number is. So now, when Mark comes in for individual site plan approvals, as part of that process, we, as the engineer, my firm, has to do, if we're doing the project for Mark, we have to do the calculations. We need the bedroom counts, calculate the flows, so that way we can go to the water sewer department or the town's engineer and verify that the town has capacity for those. So that way, when we come to the planning board, we can report back that, okay, we've checked with water and sewer. Town engineer or water and sewer department has confirmed that yes, the town has capacity and that the flows are available. So that's done on each site plan process. Now, the difference here is that I think what we're hearing is that every time we do that, we also got to square up. Where are we compared to that flow that was approved? Because we're eating that back, right? Every time we come in, for another 10,000 gallons a day, that's 10,000 off of that allocation that's been agreed to. We can certainly do that without a great deal of difficulty.
John, what I also want to point out here, though, is that I think if the back and forth after the master plan was confirmed, if you go back through all the documents, the master plan development agreement happened without any flows associated to that. That document was finished. It was time after that that flows started to get in the conversation.
I think they were at the same time.
Looks like it's the same.
I think it was the same time when you look at those documents. I think you'll see that base of design was
Well,
somewhere in.
And I will say,
14 months later.
that in many communities, in many communities,
It wasn't approved, yeah.
The planning board is looking, the planning board's not getting involved with the water and sewer capacity. That's the job of the town or the water provider. In many instances, it's a precinct, a village district. It's not even the same entity that is involved with that water and sewer capacity for a lot of the master plans
Well,
I've
it
been
is.
involved.
It is here.
Understood, but the point being is that it's not, the point is that there was a number later than the master plan that was agreed to for that. It's a separate deal than the density of the project, right? The density of the project is related to traffic and related to land use stuff, the density, the number of units that the property could support. That was what was agreed to in the master plan.
It's easily fixed.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah,
that's
All you gotta do is come in and talk to the board of selectmen.
Like the third time you've interrupted him, I want to hear what he has to say.
yeah, so again, every time we square up, and we come in, if Mark wants to come in with 50 units. We have to give the number of the bedrooms, we have to give the flows, and we have to just square up where it is agreeing related to this agreement to the town. And we also have to provide that DES as well, the state wants to see that as well for the water and sewer connections. So again, to me, that's a pretty simple process, and maybe we're all on the same page with that, it seems like it's very simple. To do that every time we come in with another document.
So to answer to that, I guess I'm looking at it as twofold. We know we have this master plan development agreement. If I'm worried that there might not be enough allocation, right? So if we know that, that doesn't mean I'm reopening the master plan. It doesn't mean I'm doing that at all. But if we look at this and say, wait, based off of what Loon's envisioning and what we think is going to happen, we think we should potentially go into the select board, it's our understanding, we'd be meeting with the select board, in which we'd say, we want to make sure that instead of, if you're at 68, we think we need another 5%. A typical flow of the Holiday Inn that came in is X amount of gallons. We're worried about that when we look at the rapids, and that's why we said it's a 5-year plan. We want to make sure that we're doing our best to spend our time and resources to give the town enough notice to be able to start planning. So all the tax revenue, permit fees, and betterment fee, however we want to look at it for new development, go towards infrastructure to make sure we never have this problem, that we're developing in a good manner. That being said, it doesn't necessarily do, in my opinion, with the master plan. It is, if we're starting to worry that the allocation towards our project's not accurate, we should go to the select board, we should talk about it, and that could be also part of a greater conversation about all the other things that we want to contribute to as a good developer. But it doesn't, again, it shouldn't have anything to do with going for a 8-lot line adjustment, project.
Okay,
I would say that John summed it up very well as far as how, in my opinion, that works or should work, is that the 1,018 units is 1,018 units. Okay, no matter what, that was the number that this planning board, a way previous planning board approved. The water allocation, which I was unaware until just now that it was done 14 months later, but that was a discussion, I believe, between the board of selectmen and the developer at that time. To come up with those calculations of how many bedrooms and how many units and 2 bedrooms and condos and houses, and they calculated to 300 and something thousand gallons per day, round numbers. And the board said at that time that was that guaranteed number. Okay, I shouldn't say guaranteed. We confirmed that we had the capacity to give you 300,000 gallons a day. I'm using that again as a round number. Don't quote me on this. It's in that piece of paper over there. But one of the things I've always said is that's the guarantee. So if you hit that guarantee at 980 units, that doesn't mean you have to stop building. It just means that the board didn't guarantee that back in 2006. So I guess my thought has always been that you would then at that point come to whoever the current board of selectmen is and say, we've used up the water and we want more. But the idea of approaching that proactively and ahead of time, say, we know we're gonna need more, is not a bad idea. I mean, you have the approval for the 1,018 unit. The other thing that I've been aware of all along is in that calculation, it's all based on residential property and 2 commercial spaces, the Pemmy Base Camp and what they call the club, which I believe is like an indoor community center for the residents over there. There's no restaurants calculated in there. There's no additional skier service base building in there. There's no retail space in there. There's no office space, et cetera. That's in the master plan, but it's not in the water guaranteed discussion or number. It's not part of that calculation. If you're gonna do that proactively, I would say figure out, not that you have to know how many seats are gonna be in your restaurant, but bring that into the discussion.
And that's what we wanna do, and that's where we looked at that. Research, we find that, we're like, well, wait a minute, saying we need, we're gonna have retail, we're gonna have restaurants at the bottom of these hotels, we're gonna have all this, let's make sure we plan for it. What I'm asking for is to close the book on the master plan discussion, we all know we're operating under it, we all are doing that in good faith, and then period, let's talk next steps. We need to, as a good developer, help with traffic studies, we need to look at the flows, not wait till we get to 336, 760 and say, now we need more. Let's start to plan ahead. And let's be able to focus on the small things. So when we come in for little subdivisions and roads, we focus on turning radiuses and fire truck access and all those very important concepts. But the bigger pictures of flows and those other items have been addressed or are being addressed to be proactive. So in 10 years, we're not up against it.
Can I give you just a little comfort on the water? I know it's not part of the master plan, but more part of the select board issue. We did undertake as best we could, count of all the bedrooms, trying to discount the ones that are listed as 12 bedrooms and 9 bedrooms and put them as what they are. Based on that, when we compared the bedrooms and the flow with what was allocated in that 336,000 gallons per day, where what has been approved and is what is under construction and permitted is about 24% of capacity. So we're not anywhere near that discussion. And we understand that when we get to the point where you're now doing a big build out, you start to put in a hotel. That's when I think we're gonna have to come before the select board and get back to that question. But again, it's not a master plan discussion.
Correct, and I want to do that soon.
Paul,
Well, it is a master plan discussion. The master plan is about planning for the towns, all the town infrastructure, how it affects it, how a hotel affects it, how South Peak affects it. So it is a part of that. And I take exception to what you're saying here, because you have forever and a day said, when South Peak meets that gallonage, whether they've got 1,018 units or not, they're gonna have to come back in. Now I'm hearing you change a little bit, so I don't know why that is, but the reason I brought it up was it's generated a lot of discussion here, because one thinks it's this, one thinks that, you want a little more. And now that the new tank's going in, would be a great time for you to, and it's not all part of the master plan, but it would be a great time for you to approach the board and say, hey, look, we've got the tank, we've got more water, we've helped you, we would like to have a little more gallons. I mean, that's why I brought it up, because it's part of the planning that
I have no issue with going.
there's two definitions here. One's the 1,018, one's the gallons. You know, and I think trying to get those bedroom numbers verified will certainly help. And as you said, you're way under it right now, but you don't want to get up to that point and wait. And planning is all about not getting to that point. Not getting to the point where it affects the town or where it affects you. And that's the same whether it's water and sewer, traffic, or any of that. So for me, it is all part of planning. And as far as the master plan goes, I think we just need a document. There needs to be a document besides all of what Carol found that maybe you don't have. I'm sure you probably do. You probably comb through all of the boxes and make copies of all that stuff, but there should be a document that the town has, that South Peak has. It says, here it is, here's the 2006 master plan that everybody says is okay. And to me, then you put it to bed. That's when you put it to bed, because that, everybody has it. And that's what you're living by.
All I can say is we have provided everything that we had, that we understood to be part of the master plan. Checked with what Carol had, and I think they are exactly the same. But you are correct. I have not seen, and the town has not presented the signed document. Why
So-
that is? I
So why
do
don't we
not
make,
know.
that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is why don't we, between the developer and the planning board, come together and make the document? It seems like most of the information you say you have, Carol has some, so why don't you
Well,
make,
that's what he's. Okay, so I printed it out on the wrong size of paper. This was the text.
Yeah.
This was the original master plan submission that he submitted
so,
at that meeting.
Yeah.
And then this is the revised page. So I think what we were suggesting was that this as a package would be it.
And for clarification, there was, as I understand it, the traffic study, there was a binder,
Right.
probably 600 pages of.
there was addendums, yeah, there was addendums that went with
That
traffic.
that I understood with it, and I've got an electronic version, I don't have a hard copy of that, but
But the hard copy is back there and it's massive.
So could we put that all together, either in a binder form or something that says, here's what it is, so both parties can agree that this is what it is. And then going forward, you can weigh everything. It doesn't have to be exactly against that. You realize that it's a living document that it changes, but at least we would have something so that it's not so confusing to pour through those boxes.
We
Or
may
pour
have,
through what we have in our files at home.
we can confirm that what we've already provided is the cleanest version. In an effort to make it so we've got something to look back on. If that would be helpful.
Plus the document with the comments you submitted.
Yep, so we'll put those in, we'll get everything together, and then that way, as we move forward, we can kind of say, here's the master plan. And then we can also look at anything else that's going on and be involved in other aspects of it, whether it's a select board with different allotments or different projects as we go.
Well, my understanding of it is being a planned phase development, as I said, requires two things. Developer agreement and the master plan. The developer agreement, I believe. The basis of design is part of that developer agreement, isn't it?
it couldn't be because the development agreement was entered into and on the registry as of August 2006. The basis for design is dated, I got two versions, August and September 2007. So it's impossible to then reference because it was created a year later. The basis for design was created a year after the development agreement.
Well,
Okay, is it possible that this is one of those things where you say, Ray Gorber, or, an engineer, you guys figure it out, the rest of it, we're approving it, subject to, is there any of that? Just making sure that.
I don't think it's about it.
Are you talking about the basis of design? Are you talking about the whole master?
Was the basis of design something that was left hanging, like a condition
Oh,
subsequent?
No, it's a separate path again. I mean,
Oh,
master
okay.
plan is what we're talking about, the density, the traffic and all of that. When it comes to water usage, that's before the select board, which I assume is why it's not part of this.
Well, I think what's confusing this conversation is that. South Peak is a planned phase development. And as such, it requires two things. So you can't just say that the master plan is the only thing it requires. It requires the master plan. And it requires the developer agreement. But there is some confusion as to when the sounds like, I thought they were both generated pretty close. And that's why it was done, because of the water demand on the town at the time. So we'll probably have to do a little more research into how that
I'd be happy
that
for-
separation, that type. Does that matter today? Probably not, but it's gonna matter in the future, because
Well,
someone's gonna, you know, it,
We're being proactive on that though. What I'm trying to get at here is I think we're trying to come at this. I feel like there's issues that the town, that people, as you mentioned, earlier, people are talking, this is my concern, you're trying to, you're trying to make sure that traffic and sewer and all these things are addressed. I'm in agreement, there's other things, but we also have a master plan that we've reaffirmed, we've double checked, we've got all these attorneys' time, we've got all this going on that we need to put certain things to bed, which I'm happy to help do. And then in conjunction, separate than that, we need to continue to talk about other projects, other allotments, allocations, and make sure that the town and South Peak are on the same page, because if we have a plan that changes, meaning if we think it's 336 when someone gave it to you 14 months later, if it changes and I said, turns out the hotel's not working well at all, we're gonna go with 10 houses instead of the big hotel. You guys wanna know that so you can reallocate sewer. The select board would wanna know that. But as far as where we're at today is, we've got a master plan, we're there, we wanna keep operating in the spirit, we don't wanna go backwards when we really need to be going forward.
well, that's why it's important that you decide whether it's 1,018 units or it's the gallons, because if you change and say, we're not gonna build single families, everybody wants the condo hotel, and your unit count becomes 1,018, but your water usage is over,
But
that's
Paul,
what I'm saying.
Paul, you can't, we have to go by the unit count, because let's just pretend I said, you know what, I think I want 1 bedrooms only. 1 bedrooms is my thing. We're gonna do that, and I'm gonna build 4,000. I can't.
You can't, because green
I can't.
space, it's all risk.
It's 1,018 and has nothing to do with gallons. So it's not, the gallons is a separate conversation, still valid, and we need to be concerned about it. I'm not saying we're not, but it doesn't have to do with 1,018. If we use them all or don't use them all, it's 1,018 max. That's what it is. If we change that, it's a change in the master plan.
I think the easy way to look at this is 1,018 was derived because of density. You could build 1,018 single-family homes on the property as large as it is. That was what everybody understood, right?
1,018 units.
1,018 units. So think about that for a minute. If he comes in, he says, I'm gonna build 1,018 homes on this property. Could be one bedroom homes. It could be 10 bedrooms. There was nothing in the approval that said which it would be. There's nothing in the master plan that talks about bedroom size, etc. And because it was all based on density, and the density is not governed by bedrooms. Density is governed by how many units you can put on a parcel. And so that's why it was not a part of the discussion, because that's not what planning board.
But that basis of design came in.
That's a completely
You
separate,
guys keep trying to say that.
but it is. It's a completely separate matter that-
Let's not talk over one another, so, John, you go ahead.
It's a completely separate matter. We have to. So again, I'm gonna use another example of a project that I'm involved in. It's a very large project that has its own wells. It's got its own water system. The state has an approved production capacity for that system. So what they do is they meter the flows of their connections. And then every time we go in for another phase, we say, this is our metered flow, our peak day for the last year. And then here's our bedroom count, or in some cases, we got, a restaurant we're coming in with 50 seats at, 45 gallon or 40 gallons per day per seat, or a hotel at 200 gallons per day per room. And we have a running table that every time we go into the state, we square it up every single time. And it would be the same exercise. It's not relevant to the density. It's not relevant to the traffic. It's relevant to the town, water and sewer capacity. That's what this is relevant about. We have to demonstrate that we're within that allotted capacity. And I feel that it does not relate to that number of units. That's the number of units only relates to calculate the bedrooms, to calculate the flows, to demonstrate it's in compliance.
So are you saying that?
Hold on, let OJ
Okay.
speak.
Yeah, I have a question. Was Chair put together a memo to us, the planning board, laying out exactly every document that we have received regarding the master plan. And to read down through them, there's the South Peak Resort on Loon, the 2006 package that they put together. Then there are numerous appendixes, including the existing conditions plan, master development plan, conceptual master plan, infrastructure phasing, the master utility infrastructure, the draining plan, of which there's 3 different parts, or 3 different sheets, I should say. There's a conceptual core area amenity plan, there's a building perspective of, again, 4 separate sheets laying out the perspective. Then there's another appendix, that's the traffic impact study, that's the one that's, well, this one's the 66 pages, so I don't know if the 500 page one. There's an appendix to the master plan landscape design guidelines from the SE group. There's another appendix of a draft architectural design guideline. That's 66 pages. That also includes residential design guidelines. That's 85 pages. Then there's the Centex Destination Properties Port Area Project Standard Dredge and Fill Permit application. And then there's the Centex Destination Properties Sutton Brook and Crooked Mountain Brook Channel Restoration Projects Final Design Report. I will make a motion that we accept those specific documents as the 2006 South Peak Master Plan. And we'll add to that the what's labeled the June 2023 update, which is just comments regarding that master plan. And consider that whole package, could just confirm that that is the 2006 master plan for South Peak Resort.
When I'm ready, I want to ask a few more questions. I think we should take some public comment. as well.
We can do that, or we can second the motion and take comments on the motion. I just think we're getting into a circular discussion about that basis of design. It was never included in here. It's between the selectmen. We just need to end that circle of conversation. If we want to make an amendment to my motion and include it in here,
I have a couple questions on this.
that's fine.
One of the things that appears that should be done, you should set aside green space for lots of less than 15,000 square feet. You haven't been doing that.
You want me to address that? We discussed that at the last meeting. The green space allocation was captured by the density, and the density was allowed was the 1,018. And it was all done based on what you could fit on the size lot and you divided. The other thing I point out is that means that you would have the appropriate green space if every single lot was divided and it was 1,018 of them, and there were 1,018 single family homes. We know that's not going to be the case here. And indeed, with the master plan update, the last time we were here, we showed you the green space calculations currently is,
That's what you showed us.
which I think was like, I can't remember off the top of my head, 60 or 80 acres. It's just set aside already basically for trails, for ski use, that kind of thing. What we also pointed out was part of the master plan, there was one sheet that identified that there were at the time 9 acres being allocated for green space. That did not include the Halsey parcel that was added in later. And when you do the same percentage, you add in the Halsey parcel, that would mean there'd have to be set aside 11 plus acres, I don't remember the exact number, but 11 acres to be set aside. There was some discussion, I think at that meeting, about that being essentially deeded green space. I've talked with Mark about that, talked with the engineering firm. I've looked at the regs and what we said in what was initially set in the master plan by the original developer. We acknowledge that it should be deeded green space. And I think that 11 acres can easily be done. It's really a matter of just identifying it and having a surveyor. Is it going to be along the river, or is it going to be up near sort of in the area of the water tank, or where it's going to be? But I think we can commit without any real issue.
We have so
So I
much.
guess the question is, are you willing to commit green space every project now going forward?
Well, we're willing to commit 11 acres.
We're committing the maximum right up front. Instead of doing it in small projects, so for example, if we take a building lot and we have 100% covered because it's the middle of the village. One big building, and that's, it's a separate owner. It was a hotel developer with, not proposing this. I'm using it as an example. That might not have any green space there. We know that we've got to have the 11. we know we're gonna be so above that, that we wanna deed some of it right now and just say we're covered. We don't wanna have to worry about it each step of the way. That whether it's whatever's going on, we wanna make sure it's clear that in this, because of the 1,818, because of everything involved, let's just put some aside to not have it be a focal point on each step of each project.
Paul,
So, and I don't have all the calculations, maybe you guys do, but. Green space is green space can only be accounted for certain types of property, like it can't. There's only a certain percentage of recreational property that can be used in green spaces, so you can't use, some of the water. Something like that. There's certain things that can and can't be used for it, and I don't know what that is or how much of that is over on South Peak, so how does that get defined?
I guess I would say that we're so above it.
Okay.
That where, if we defined it by like, it has to be nice, beautiful trees, we have so much that we are proposing. That to take the 11 acres, that is what is required based off the master plan. We're happy to put it up, it can be up near the water tower, that is nice area, that gives a good buffer for everybody, that. It's not a debate that is it in the river, is it a walkway?
Right.
What we're proposing is we're gonna give you such good, easy green space, it's just a non-factor. That we don't wanna spend all the time to talk about it, and everyone's happy.
I'm okay with that answer, as long as it's not any of those areas that.
Correct.
I don't know, are not supposed to be.
We don't wanna.
If you've got enough and you deed it, then it meets the requirement.
And I will also add to give the board some comfort. In the master plan, and I put this in our fact sheet when we
Yeah, I've got that.
raised it last time, that the original developer agreed by the town's lot coverage limit of 70%. But importantly, because of this development, it's determined by the combined square footage of all buildings, roads, parking areas, non-permeable recreational facilities as compared to the full 362.3 acres. So again, they were looking at it big picture. As I see it, there are two parts to this: 11 acres deeded, and then requirement that we meet 70%, less than 70% lot coverage.
Lot coverage. Right, and if you have that deeded, then
I mean, you're not gonna get 70% lot coverage on single family homes.
Well, I hear you. Now, bottom line is, I think the planning board back in 06 realized this was not an issue for them, and I think that's why.
And I think if we deed it, it just puts it to bed. So we wanted to deed it, let's put it to bed and move on to the next.
couldn't agree more.
Let's open up public comment, and we'll,
So
a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Would any member of the public like to speak? Sir?
Yeah, I live at Riverside Terrace, and I just wanted to speak about the density issue that was going back and forth. And when I bought there, I'm an original owner, I bought from Centex. I understood clearly that things were gonna be changing over the years. It was like, I didn't assume or was never told that this is what you're gonna get. There's never gonna be any changes. Years ago, we changed the Riverside units along the river, took out the density of those, turned those over to single-family homes. So sometimes you get less density, and now sometimes you might get more. So I'm confused sometimes about how the issue is brought up about a particular phase of this project having the density. It's in years gone by, it was offset by something else, and over the course of the whole project, things will change. And it's confusing to me to listen sometimes about trying to get everything like written in stone. And I understand that it's probably not a bad thing to do, but that's not always the way that it works, and it's been changing there ever since I bought. I'm the only one that lives at South Peak full time. There's nobody else. And another thing that confuses me is the water study. When there's nobody there, which there isn't hardly ever, the consumption of water per day is, I don't know how you can figure that as being relevant. And I know you have to do that, but when you go through there, like almost all the time, there's nobody there. Weekends in the wintertime, holiday weeks, there are people there, and then they're all gone. And the water volume is probably never gonna reach that capacity that was probably figured in the first place. I don't know, because there's never gonna be anybody there all the time. That there won't be. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, sir?
I just have a question and I know you can't respond, but, I'm still confused over the conversation.
Speak up, please.
I'm still confused over there's 1,018 units. And developer wants to build those 1,018 units, but there's an amount of water that's been allocated. Is it that town needs to realize and build more infrastructure to support the remaining units? Or can, and the developer gets stopped at that point, that he can't build another unit? I think I'm hearing the developer says, not my problem, I can continue to build the units. Because that's what I've gotten approval for. And it seems like there's two different conversations going on. But no one's really said, nope, that has to stop. I feel like the developer's saying, no, I need to keep going, and the town needs to solve that problem because they committed to deliver, or committed that I can build those. So I don't know if after I stop that can be answered, or whether it's.
You want to answer that, Paul?
Well, I think that Mark has said that there's plenty of capacity for what's there now.
Right.
And Mark's
There is
committed
24%
to coming
what's
back
there
in to
allocated.
talk to the board about what they do about the difference between the 1,018 versus what he perceives, that gallons number is, and how they can revise that. And to me, that's probably part of some developer agreement or a new basis of design, or however that's treated, but I mean, that's something, and you're right, it's between the developer and the board of selectmen. It's not between the developer and planning board. All the planning board cares is that there is enough water to be able to serve your future needs over there. And that's where usually Ray Corber comes in, but it is, I mean, there is some confusion, and it does need to be straightened out, but it's not part of the master plan discussion.
Agreed. And I have one last thing, it's addressing something that Mr. Goshen has stated, I think. And that's that, well, there's lots of other development going on. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to a developer who's gotten a commitment to, yep, I can build all of these. And then be told, yeah, you know what, you can't, because we approved these other developments that are going. And they gobbled it up before he got developed. And I guess, again, not for this board maybe right now, but I think that's another piece of confusion I have, is that if that happens, he's stuck at 600 units because, well, we don't have that allocation. I don't know whose problem that becomes.
Okay,
That's
you want to?
Yeah, I can address that. As each project that this board approves, the town has established a first come, first served basis for obtaining rights to our water and our sewer. So as a project gets approved, they're on the list. There are several vested projects like South Peak that have been assured that the town will provide them with water and sewer. And we have a list of those. South Peak is on it, Forest Ridge is on it, the Rapids is on it for what was approved there, and if they change that, we'll have to relook at that, but that's on the list. The hotel up there, whatever the Home to Suites now. And the landing, it was 5, okay, and then as a project gets developed, gets approved, that first come first served basis, they're now in line, like across the street here got approved. We haven't figured out what that number is, but that gets added to the allocation. So when our town engineer, Ray Corber, looked, and more specifically looking at the sewer, because that's the stranglehold on the water. We're at, I think, 68% capacity right now, but that capacity is a theoretical capacity. If you went down there and measured it, you go, wait, we're way under that. That's because where the theory includes all 1,018 units here, all the others, what, 300 they can build up at Forest Ridge, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so it includes all of the approved units, not the actual flow going into that treatment plant.
Plus, it's less anyway, it's not all units are occupied at once.
Well, yeah, going,
That's what
going
he
back to what this gentleman said is that, you know, I forget what the number is, 350 gallons a day is the basis for a,
150
what is it?
150 gallons per day per bed.
Per bed, okay. So, you know, every day that there's houses up there that sit empty, your bedrooms up there, there's 150 gallons that really aren't even going into our sewer, but they're in the count.
But that's part of the problem that the town had as well with the demand, because you have to be able to supply that demand when it's
Peak.
there.
Pete,
But when it's not, town had a problem with keeping the water moving and some of these other tanks, so that, I mean, there's inherent problems with having those,
You gotta loop it around so it doesn't get
Right.
stale. basically.
right? So, I mean,
Okay.
they have their own inherent problems.
Cal, you had a question or comment?
No, I was just gonna say, you know, during a busy week, they have to, the water plant has to filter close to maximum capacity of the water during a busy week.
Yeah.
So, so there is, you know, it doesn't happen often, you know, certain times a year, but there's still times when, the water plant is, operating at full tilt.
Okay.
correct,
Close to full,
at full current capacity.
right,
We have
one gallery.
permits to withdraw another 500,000 gallons of water through our existing water intake structure under the East Branch. Obviously, there's a cost to putting in the filtration system for that, but we have the permitting to do that. And the way that has worked in the past is the money the town collects through water tap fees pays, by the time we reach the demand for the next cell, there's enough money in that tap fee account to go out and buy it. Which is what we did a few years ago when we put it, now, seems like a few. I've been here 12 years, within 12 years, past 12 years, we bought the third cell. And basically just paid cash out of the water tap fee fund and bought it, put it in, and, as Carol said, we're up at that limit on the busiest of busy days. On the other days, we have the problem that Paul just mentioned, that the water stagnates in our tanks because it doesn't get used. So, feast or famine,
So basically, there's room for 5 cells? Four, okay.
4 cells.
We have
Do
3
we
now.
have to do an addition or something if we put that last cell in?
We will be doing some sort of addition. Technically, the building was designed to hold 4, but there's space in there that's used for not the
Storage of
cell, the
fluids.
storage of chemicals and equipment and stuff that wasn't fully taken into account when they, designed that building.
Anybody else? Is a motion to close public comment?
So move.
Okay.
Show second, all right, all in favor?
Okay.
We're ready to vote on this. You want to repeat your motion again?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we, accept the list of documents that I previously read off and don't need to again, Yes. as the 2006 South Peak Master Plan, and accept the June 2023 supplement comments as an addition to that 2006 plan.
Okay, is there a
I
second?
think on my memo, I said 28th. it should have been the 23rd.
What's that?
Um,
Well, it's June 2023 is the title of the
Yeah.
the sheet with the package that has the supplemental comments on it.
Twenty-eight. 28. Hear that?
Is there a second?
Second.
All, any further discussion?
As long as we get them all in one place, I'm.
Okay.
You know,
You wanna get those together and digitize them?
and I think the towns should sign it. And I think the developer should sign it, so we have something that says. Who's approving this? Is it
Okay,
the planning
so-
board of,
Okay, so,
We go to the county seat.
I'm gonna make copies of all that stuff and put in notebooks, like,
put it in a notebook, yeah, and then
okay, so it's.
with a signature page from. The planning board and one from the developer, and that way there, that this is what we have agreed, that way there's one document.
So I'm gonna take.
They can have
this-
a copy, the town can have a copy, and that's what we look, that's what we do.
Okay, so I'm gonna just talking to OJ. I'm gonna take this money out of the engineering, account, the CIP engineering account. And take it to Staples or something to. How many copies?
Two.
Just
To
two,
town?
one for us and one for them.
And
And the
also,
signature,
if they can scan it, digitize it. Probably easy, more efficient for them to do it than to use staff time.
One question.
No,
Go ahead.
we're talking about just the
Yep,
ones on this list,
right.
And the supplement.
and this,
and supplement, correct?
Joe,
If they don't have a copy down at town, the county seat. In Haverhill. They say they don't. Will this signed copy be sent to them for documentation to be the
Well,
county seat?
I don't think they'll take it.
it's $1 a page anyway, each quarter.
The register of deeds over time has gotten stingier and stingier about what. they're doing. So I think they are gonna reject this document because. It has plans and each plan would have to be stamped. There's a bunch of rules that go for each plan.
I would think as long as
I don't
the
think
town-
it'd be possible.
You're right, they'll never report it.
They'll never report it.
Right.
So,
as long as,
But we get a copy, you get a copy also.
That's fine.
and the signature page in your, everybody's.
okay,
Yeah, let's get this out of the way.
So, OJ made the motion, Joe seconded it,
Then we get a vote.
best
Right.
place to go.
all right. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Um,
Anyone opposed? Okay,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
good evening.
Oh, a lot of work, wasn't it? I got a question for you.
Yeah, 5-minute recess.
You look at the traffic flow, used to be a problem over the years ago, when I was with you. And now we're in the problem. It's not pretty bad. It's something that we never do those Saturdays. Fifty part of it?
Yeah.
Every weekend.
Yeah, one.
They start coming up every other weekend. And they only start coming up. Then they come up. The road going in and around. That's it. Then they put bound, south ramp, south. Really? Put bound, off ramp, coming in there. Beach carriers up. So you drive around the road. Me with, like, the racetrack and, the one.
Yeah, we
actually.
We said the same thing, and
That's
fortunately,
nice.
state highway, because of locations, they weren't interested.
Because you can put a
Yeah.
gate, you would, and go out.
Yeah.
But beach carriers,
Just many times to help them bring it up.
take it out, you put a sign saying, southbound, southbound development. No, northbound egress.
Plan, you can still.
That's where the conflict came more, came up with, they just came up with, 20 years ago.
I wish they did 500% of the time.
I'm trying to get it done, but it's not.
First of the base.
We got a lot of kids.
We're not going home till we read it.
Yeah.
Read it tonight.
No, you put me to sleep. Right.
We got- come in, we're gonna talk about it.
Ran out of juice.
Stuff to California.
They just twisted up. You'll wait it.
Love Jen, man. They're awesome. But nothing's changed there. I love the Whale Town. It's good. That team is like rock solid too. They're good.
I know families are part of it.
But yeah.
It was a good group before. You got what you want, I voted for you. You'd have
I
to-
appreciate it. Hey, we're gonna come in and we wanna do more, cause I'm worried, I wanna help with all this stuff, 'cause it's gonna benefit, I mean, we can't just let it be. And now, you know, we can help spearhead and put pressure on all the other developers to do what they should do.
It worked back in the eighties when they did it with those, when developers came in, it really helped us down a lot.
And I think that the other thing that's interesting is the SE group, who we've hired to do everything, they get 50% of their business.
We were just saying, you know, we built a bunch of condos, and when you buy, when you sell one, people move in, the wife stays all week, and then they're there every weekend. Then it goes to every other weekend, then it goes like once a month, and then it goes to, well, maybe we'll all make it together for Christmas,
Up here,
and then they sell.
in Florida.
Thank you. That was flooded.
Did you get that picture?
Yeah, almost.
I'll bet, it didn't say flooded too long. I am.
It's closed, this last one, they came with water.
No.
It's like this close, they know. All right, guys, have a great day. Thank you, guys.
Can I, you can,
Is with Robert Welch of the area, Sun Robert.
C. That was a CH. That could have been around.
reconvene on Carroll.
Large ones down here, you can see like, come here, a couple large ones, but he had a place that was named.
No, that one.
This one was waiting.
Jim,
Yes.
this is Jason on the Zoom. I just want to check in to see if for any reason you want me to remain on the Zoom for the meeting. I'm happy to do so if,
To be a different
For other
bylaw.
business.
You say if that guy never.
Give us now his grandson and daughter.
Did you catch that?
Okay, that would be a Sunday.
Jason, can you hear me?
I can, yes, but there was some background noise, so I did not hear the answer. My apologies.
Guess what we're gonna do?
Okay,
No, he's still.
But I'm talking,
Okay, no.
he was a Marine Corps.
Okay.
The guy we knew wasn't. Not particularly an expert.
No. Now, at a Christmas party, we really love to go.
He did what, Charlie?
Oh, yeah. On a drive-by. Christmas party.
Yeah. I go and go to my Christmas party.
I wasn't there, it was my party, but I didn't go to them. And I was supporter.
Oh, rough crowd, huh?
Oh, well, I remember when I was 8 years old, there was a warrant out for his arrest. I was like, that guy lives in the DB River, you know? Because after we got out of jail, he wasn't supposed to live in Grafton County.
Well, that's a family came, well, White River, yeah. Cable in the Wells River area.
Okay, that's our common ground where we work, so that's not a big deal.
His brother was a town cop in North Wichita. His other brother Slim. his other
The
was
Welsh family out of the Welsh River area had to have a lot of money at one time. Because remember the Welsh building with a C in Groton that they built, it's a big, massive apartment building for the town, it's right.
Yeah.
On it. And they had to be involved with the manufacturing in Groton, Vermont at that time.
a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, but I remember, no, this was what I would call a very first class apartment building for the Yarrow.
My cousin get a big farm over in Groton. Can't remember the thing, the whole thing so long. Nice talking to you, bud.
Yeah.
Just check, see if there was any
Oh, yeah,
affiliation.
no worries.
Already have one paper copy of everything on that list?
Yes,
Okay, you really need to make one copy.
yeah, but it's gonna be like a notebook bigger than that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm not belittling the task.
Right.
Once you put it into the copy machine, it doesn't matter whether you make 1 or 10, it's the.
Right, although it's time to take care because some of the documents are too big. So I can't email them, I can't, so he's gonna try to get me a thumb drive with like his maps, like. Cause it's clearer if it's on the thumb drive as opposed to the ones that I have.
Well, there's no reason why the document can't include modern technology like thumb drive.
Fine
you know,
with that.
for part of the stuff,
Well,
I think. You need a hard, one,
I need one hard copy.
right,
One. that Once I have stuff that I can put on a thumb drive, then I can make as many thumb drives as I want. You know, so
I mean, the
it's thumb
signature
drives
page is
big.
probably the most important thing in the whole thing, make sure that.
All right, we're ready to roll here?
Yes.
So conceptual review. Adding mobile homes, pre-existing manufactured home park. Robert Walsh, Big Bob, and Robert Walsh Jr., Robbie, DBA Walsh Realty Apartments, 143 Central Street, PO Box 147. Woodsville, New Hampshire, 03785-0147, and DBA Jettison Co., PO Box 147, Woodsville, New Hampshire. Jettison LLC.
All right, well, thank you for meeting me tonight, and hopefully let's go a little quicker than the last one. I think it's a little smaller scale project, so.
Okay.
All right, so Jettison, I'm a member of Jettison LLC. My name's Robert Welch, referred to as Sign or Robbie, and as you stated. Jettison LLC currently owns a mobile home park on just off of Route 3 in Lincoln. It would be off of Burt's Way and Mayford Lane. Currently, there are 8 mobile homes there, of which we own 6 of them. So we still have 2 individuals where we just rent the lots, but not the homes themselves. Part of the reason that this got spurred on, and it's a little bit of time crunch, but that's completely on me, not you guys. We, unfortunately, nobody got hurt, but we had a building burned down in Woodsville. We lost a duplex, but insurance money. So that's why we're looking to kind of get the ball rolling, see where we can reinvest it, because if we don't reinvest that within a year, it's treated as income. So we get knocked with federal income taxes. So that's what kind of spurred this project going along. Unfortunately, I was a little ignorant of the whole process here, because I figured, you know, I have my 12 lots, I got taxed on the 12 lots. I just figured I'd get a quick building permit. I know I have to do the, and that's also part of the issue with this park, since it's so old. There's no concrete pads in the place, and now state of New Hampshire requires concrete pads, storm ties, all that. So that's part of the development. I need to, you know, there were old homes there, but they got yanked out over the years. In order to put new ones in, gotta put the slab in. So that's part of it. I do have marked on here just a quick tax map of where the proposed locations would be, and all of these already have existing water and sewer, and there are electrical meters in the park as well. So all the infrastructure is already pre-existing.
So you're not increasing the amount of homes on the lot?
No, just basically what's existing there now. I just want to put back to what was there.
We're increasing the amount, but not the amount that was there when I bought it, we had the water and sewer.
Okay, so it's been a while since those additional mobile homes have been on.
They were pulled out over the years, not replaced.
So what are the numbers? Give me the numbers. So the next.
Okay, so currently there are 8. I want to increase it to 12.
Said there were 12 before.
There were 12 at one point, yes, and I even
Which are
on
the
the,
With 12 in a house,
there's the cabin still there,
Yeah,
yeah.
12 of the
the
cabin.
house is gone.
Oh, well, there's a little
Near
cabin
the
in
road,
front.
you went here, when the guy bought it, but Nathan LaRue is the one that had the trailer park. I live right next door, I grew up with him, I helped build a place. I'm trying to dissuade them, but the information that I know. As you came in the first driveway, on Mavis Lane, up to the right was her house.
Okay, that's the open lot with the water and sewer that never had a trailer on it. I couldn't figure it out.
What she did was, she tore the old house down with Ricky, she wanted a new place, she had enough money coming in. She had enough money coming in from her brother who worked in the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. She tore down that house, put a new trailer in for herself. And what you can see with the 2 that were taken out here. There was a house there, the water source tap in it, that wasn't part of the water allocated to the trailer park.
Yep.
Where the cabin is in the middle, that came from from the Eagle Cliff restaurant, which is now defunct, gone. Moved over there back in 1969. And previous to that, there was a 2-bay truck garage with 2 pumps and gas tanks in the ground. Those have since been removed for your information. The garage torn down, This place, Bert built a small shed for a utility and tool shed. That's where Bert Wakeham, Bert was Nathan's husband. I live right next door to you, by the way. Three houses down, but still. That's why I know it's in print to this thing. Sewer line was put in 1968, in summer. Water line was put in 1946.
So,
And when the park, when I'm presuming Mr. LaRue developed the park, he put them all in where we found them for the 12.
right,
So.
so my question is that, because once they disappear, isn't there a time limit at which they have to reappear?
Well,
1 year,
those
so,
for non-conforming use.
I get a question on that.
I mean, if it meets the requirements, doesn't matter, I mean, does all the, what you're requesting meet today's requirement, or is it?
Right,
Is it-
I mean, do these encroach in the setbacks? That Thought Homes proposing to put it up.
It looks to me like some of
Okay,
them,
so this is the property boundary line, the yellow. And then 15 feet, it's in the rural residential, this color right here.
Yeah.
is a
Rural residential, that's commercial. I get news for you. It's not rural residential in that area. It's commercial, general use.
That's what it is, general use.
Yeah,
It
it's
said-
general use of the tax.
It said, rural residential.
Make it
Oh,
easier.
sorry, I meant general use. sorry.
Okay, not trying to
They have the same set. So this is 15 feet. So this space right here, 15 feet, has to be kept clear. And you see why this building is kind of over the setback.
Well, this one here is not ours.
Yeah, we do not own
That's
that one.
Dennis. We don't own it. It's been there forever.
Okay, but, so I don't know where the,
Show them where you can put your new ones, Robbie.
There. There, 'cause that one's gone. Here, 'cause that one's gone, it looks like it's off the setback with the existing, and then
That
one.
That one was there when this.
Yeah, I know.
stuff- Yep.
okay, so the only other thing.
So we just gotta make sure it's off the 15, that should be no big deal.
Okay, so the problem child I see is, the one,
No, we'll
that's
keep that. But then
in
why?
the 100-year floodplain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have a survey, a topo survey that says that you're
We don't think we're gonna be above it.
gonna still be in it.
Yeah, we're gonna buy insurance, flood insurance.
Okay, cause I can't give you a permit for it unless it meets the federal floodplain. You know, there's a separate,
Okay, because these three are existing, are already in it.
right, and the already existing is fine. They're already existing, but if you're gonna put new in,
You can't put them in a 100-year floodplain.
well, you'd have to comply with the 100 years, so that would mean you'd have to elevate it, so it'd be above the 100-year
It's 30
floodplain.
feet above the river right now.
Okay, so,
Pardon?
It's 30 feet above the river, the other side, 20 feet below and level.
Well,
We're
here's
still on the map.
here's the problem. They show up on the FEMA map.
FEMA map's incorrect.
so,
Well, it doesn't, right now, in order for me to issue a permit and not jeopardize every single.
But I
person
agree with you,
in
what
the
I'm
whole
saying.
town.
so,
The map is
I
incorrect.
can tell you when I did it on the FEMA map, okay? This one's 100% in. This one was 100% in. The flood line doesn't go up as far as you show when I did it. This one would be half in.
Okay, so what I'm about to say is that you would need to hire you're gonna
I
have to do
know.
a surveyor anyway, but the surveyor would give you a topo, and the best thing that would, for you would be to have them show that you're out. And then you would have to send that map off to FEMA so that they can kick that part out, you know what I mean?
it's a letter of map amendment, I think they call
Yes.
it.
You know,
Something like
that, like I said, that only affects one of the homes.
Right, but the other ones look like, you know, as long as you,
Yeah, that one we should be, I think the rest of them were okay.
This is existing. This is existing.
right, I'm not worried about.
Yeah,
it. It's just-
so it's,
just,
that one shouldn't be a big deal,
That one should be a big
honestly.
deal. That-
yeah,
that's-
just make sure you're not in
Yeah.
this area.
I mean, we'll have them push us a little closer into the road, then probably will be on it, but that should be,
But you can come right to the 15.
Yeah,
yeah,
right there.
yeah.
yeah, no, we should be able to fit it.
But it,
Okay, so I think that he has only one problem child. It would be that one that's,
Carol, here's some information for you. At one time, that was in floodplain. when they put the sewer line in at Route 3, but Levesque came in from Maine. Put it in, they filled it up 20 feet high with all the rock and debris from the sewer line, raised the level up, so it's level with the road. Before that, it was the same level as the house next to the north of it.
We can just get a
There were
survey.
4 feet above
This
it.
is where,
Okay.
That was quite a drop off, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on
No,
here.
well,
We'll see what I can do.
Windows there.
Goes down over the hill, it's hard to get. They both have daughters, like I tell you,
The only.
park the car down back here, so you would.
Guys, let's move on.
Yeah.
All right, so what do these gentlemen need? Site plan or just land use permits for the mobile homes?
If they're out of. If they're out of the setbacks. And they meet the requirements, then they only need land use permits.
well, I.
But if they're with-
Cause part of what you're, the mobile homes, part of what you have to look at is lot coverage. So.
It was put in in 1968.
Lot coverage is,
So I said they meet the requirements and they're out of the setbacks. The
Well-
requirements are lot coverage and everything else.
Time they did it, there was no lot coverage and no setback.
Doesn't
Well,
matter.
you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
we can
if
meet
they
the
remove the
setbacks every
setbacks,
way with
you
the
can't
floodplain.
put them back.
okay, so let me just check with the lot coverage.
But they can get waivers or
And
exceptions
then
for that.
you,
Right, well, they-
he needs to have 2 parking spaces per unit, or if it's a pre-existing.
We got more than 2
Yeah,
per unit.
there's plenty.
We got way more than 2 per unit, because we got 2 lots with that.
Okay, so.
But are you putting mobile homes on those 2 lots? Are
homes,
What?
you putting mobile homes on those 2 lots? There's nothing on?
No, we
No.
got a lot, 2 lot, we got a big lot, that we can't put a home on, because it didn't have a water and sewer hookup.
Oh, okay,
Okay, it's not the ones we're talking about, there's typically 2 at every site,
okay.
but we got extra parking with that one. And we got extra parking behind the little building.
The cabin you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you go. You'll see where, like, this one against the thing. Against the river, that's got plenty of parking, and it's an existing one, just above 336. And we got plenty of parking up behind there, and we got plenty of parking in front of that one, parking for the thing. Basically speaking, Mayfield Lane has tons of parking. Okay, depending on how you wanna lay it out and where.
70% is what it is, it's on the dimensional chart, I'll just show you.
Okay,
70% of lot coverage, so you gotta take your trailers.
so we got 60,000 square feet,
So the dimensional chart generally
Just
is.
Yeah.
And
That's what I'm
percentage
saying.
of lot coverage, cause it's a business. use.
we're gonna be way under 70.
Yeah, I mean, cause there's.
Do we, why do we need a survey? That's the part.
Right, they're not really
We may not be able to spell
Right.
this, but
Right, if they wanted 13, I would say.
I don't mind doing
that.
that spell for this. I
And
don't
maybe
mind
the rule
doing other
came in.
things. I don't think we can get a survey.
When we gave you a map, the whole place, with every.
Well,
trailer put in,
So all you gotta do is the math and what you.
Where all the hookups are,
I'm not gonna do that.
turned it into, turned it into a town,
So-
and the document went to.
So all we gotta do is the math. We don't need a survey. It's
So that's story.
Well,
That's why
I
I
don't
don't
know
like a lot of it.
this project done.
Well, I
You
think
can,
you
but
could.
we can't blend in the whole thing, prior to.
By the time we get.
Before I
a
take
survey
my
and stuff.
stove or trailer park.
After, but after a year, they cease to be
Yeah,
considered.
Isn't that like for non-conforming uses?
No, I think after a year, if something goes away, it goes away. If you don't put it back, so if you're gonna,
Yeah, if we can't get it
my
back.
question would be, does that mean that
Cause we tried John Marsh.
if you're gonna put them back, is it a new use? I don't know, because of.
Yeah, we can.
Well, I wanna help the guy, I got no, you know, but.
It's something to think about. You get a restaurant,
You know, talk at once.
if you have a restaurant, 50 parking lots,
Where's it say that?
You only
that
use
we
30.
have a survey?
another 20 go away.
Yeah.
Application. Our permit
No, it is, it does say.
After a
that
year.
it's- Well,
Yeah, they're already paid, so,
We have a survey.
If they're still there, they
You
can
can
pay
read the
it,
date,
but
you should have it.
but he's saying the electric meters are still there.
Sorry, where the things. Yes.
if you had a pad concrete there, you might.
Well, none of them have pads because
Right.
it was a requirement back then.
And it's our fault, but I didn't realize when you taxed us for 12 lots, so we just couldn't come in and get a permit.
Okay,
If you didn't have a lot, you shouldn't have got a tax bill for years.
So you paid,
We paid
Oh, yeah, we
taxes
paid
on 12
taxes on
lots,
12 lots.
so you paid taxes on each, even though the trailers weren't there, you paid taxes on?
on the lots,
On just the land.
Well, the land, the one.
on the
point
land,
three acre.
tax,
On the whole big piece of land.
no, 12 lots plus an additional tax. The tax bill reads 12 lots.
Each one of these trailers.
We pay taxes on. And then there's a separate tax bill for 12 lots.
Oh, so that
Well,
makes,
lots plus-
that would make a difference
Plus
on
the cabin, we get
what's
tax.
considered
Plus the
current, 'cause
cabin.
you- I would think, okay, wouldn't you? If you're paying taxes on,
He's paying taxes on 1.3 acres of land.
I pay taxes on 12 lots if you look at the top of the bill.
And if you look at the tax card, it breaks it out to buildings, the number of lots, the cabin has a separate tax assessment.
And then when I found out we didn't have 12 lots, what the hell you mean, I'm paying taxes on it for years.
so each lot is taxed, and we'd have to make sure, that would help, I would think.
Well, I don't know, I mean, all these mobile homes says land area in acres says 0.
I know that, we pay 12,
It's-
we pay this on the tax bill, print it, Robbie.
I can't
We
read
have-
here, I don't have access to
We
it.
have, and it says spaces equals 12 at 1.1 acres of, I don't know if it's 1.1 acres, no.
But if it's not
It says-
separated out, then it's not.
No,
It's
it's
a
12
single
lots,
tax bill, but it says 12 spaces.
which is,
Right,
1,200 gross area per space.
but he's not paying by the building. He's
I'm paying by the
He's
lot.
paying by the lot, the 1.7 acres.
no, then I gotta pay more because it's more than the 12 lots are. 12 lots basically.
You don't have 12 lots here that I can see.
It says 1.3
12
acres.
sites.
We don't-
Right, total site.
One
It-
lot with 12 sites, total of 1.3 acres with an assessed value of $129,000.
But I pay for the 12
That's
lots.
what he's paying,
And then the
taxes on.
individual mobile homes are taxed separately.
but it is delineated that there's 12 sites on that single lot.
That makes a big difference in documentation.
I mean, just looking at if these numbers are right, the common land of 42,000 square feet of a total of 56, you do need to take out the roadways, right? Even if they're dirt, you need to take those out
Yeah. They're covered.
right.
Basically speaking, each mobile home is about 700 feet, so take out 9,000 feet. That includes the new ones.
Well,
For mobile homes. And the driveways are not as big as they look on this plan, okay? They're basically 15-foot wide. And I'm gonna say, she doesn't have the numbers on this one, we have numbers on the map. What are they roughly?
For what?
It's 334 foot long.
I'm showing 171.
Okay.
And then 83 over here.
So
I think it ought
250
to
on
be
one.
site plan and review only because if some of the abutters, if there's only, how many are there now?
8.
And you wanna have 12?
Yeah.
So if some of the abutters say we've been living beside there and there's only been 8, now there's 12. And
No,
when- and
no,
there hasn't,
the abut,
and there hasn't been anything there for a long time, might they have a problem?
the only
So-
thing,
so-
I understand, and some people might have checked, but if it meets our ordinance, we can't say no anyway, whether they.
Right.
excuse
So-
me, one thing on the abutters. I think the same abutters was there when there were 10 or 11 there.
Oh, no, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that,
Mike's garage has been there forever. And the house next door, I don't think has changed hands.
I
And
understand,
then
I mean, but if you do that, then it gives
Great
public
house, that
comment.
changed hands.
What?
Great house, big great house, that changed hands 2 years ago.
Oh, that did, okay. So that's the newest one.
And it doesn't take long to have site plan review, it takes minimal time to get site plan review ready.
And are these mobile homes you're gonna sell and just rent a lot, or you're gonna?
So the plan is, and I want to bring this up, there's no plan to doing like short-term rentals, Airbnb, stuff like that. What we do is year-round rentals. We do year leases, we don't do month to month after the year, fine, but our goal is not short-term rentals. So we're looking for more kind of permanent residents as a rental, so that's the main goal. Lincoln has plenty of Airbnbs and short-term rentals, they don't need one more, so.
Well, it certainly helps on the.
If you're looking at color map, shows the green, by the river. That's 25 feet above the river. You go down below where it shows the blue, that's only about 5 feet above the river.
I mean, I agree with you, but
I know, but.
if it shows that it's in
Well,
floodplain.
what we're
it's a-
talking about is one home that we're putting in, all the rest are already on the green. Okay, and what I asked the lady, said she couldn't do is give us approval, and we'll do an as-built on that home or not put it in if we can't get it out of the floodplain. Or gives us approval for free.
It's a little more complicated. Cause there's all these assembly
Okay.
parts.
And we'll come back for the cooperative if we get it out of the floodplain.
Like I said,
New assessment card?
and the ash tanks you don't have to worry about, they've been removed.
Okay. But like I say, if we get one of the problems we got, he mentioned that. We just presumed we could come down, we went to another town with some of the money. We walk in and get a building permit. We thought we could come down and get a building permit. We have until January 1st or 2nd, something like that, the fine was right after New Year's. To sign a contract to buy, because we can't get them, we're not gonna get them in this year anyway, it's too late in the season to dig, do the cement. Okay, but we gotta know we have the right to do it. Or we give it there to the government. Okay. With 3, we get away with it, 4 is our own money. Okay, so I don't mind taking 3, don't mind saying come back and ask for the 4th if it's out of the floodplain. Don't mind hiring the engineer to get the survey work done. We gotta know, because we have to sign a contract. We don't sign a contract,
By January 1st, you have to sign a contract.
we gotta know, right, by January 1st roughly. We gotta know ahead of time, because if we don't sign a contract, we don't know ahead of time, we gotta go buy something.
So
I mean, and that's our fault, because
Yeah, no, it's not on here,
that's
guys.
not in your town. I just presume 12 lots, we looked at the thing, this will work, fine, buy.
Basically doing a 1099 exchange.
wouldn't we?
No, it's not a
We
1099 exchange, if you lose a rental property to fire. If you don't replace it with rental property at the same value, it's ordinary income, and it's one step worse than ordinary income, because then you gotta recapture your depreciation on top of your fire thing, so you end up effectively at a 42% tax rate.
And they won't let us do a 1090 because it's
can't do a
for an insurance payout, you can't do a 1099
1031,
or 1030, yeah,
you
1031 is not
you
1099.
cannot do a 1031 under the fire.
If we,
Because you have to add new property to your portfolio. It doesn't have to be new, it's gotta be new to you. This would be new, not only new property. We're expanding what we had. Because we did 3, and that's why I was shocked when she said about the floodplain, because we just did 3. And we're pouring the slabs now. That are in a floodplain in another town. And I wanna get into which town with a building permit. Okay, and we got flood insurance on them and regular insurance on them. Okay, and I mean, the only thing they said, which you have to do by law up here now, is are they on cement pads with tie downs? Yes, they are. But you can't put them in Vermont, New Hampshire without cement pads with tie downs.
so if we go to site plan review on this, it's done, doesn't take very long.
Right.
How long does it take? 3 weeks?
We get them in and out in one meeting, I don't see any issue.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it gets, what I'm saying is, it gives him time to see whether or not his other one he wants, he can either get it out of the floodplain. And then he could come in for the whole thing, butters would be notified, and then
He could get site plan approval, and then he'd have to square away the floodplain before he gets his land use permit for the fourth mobile home.
Yeah, I'm not gonna worry about that.
That's what I'm
Like I
saying,
said,
if
I
you
don't
plan
mind.
approval, he can come in and do all of that at once, and we cover all the requirements. gives him a little more time to look around at what he can do, and that can be done in 3 weeks.
Well, the problem we have with free,
Takes a month.
Okay, we're only in September though, he said he has till
Yeah,
January.
you said yet till January, and we're in September.
don't worry, I'm not gonna wait to the end. I'll call and get a surveyor. Okay,
And that's gonna be the crux. of
that's
it.
gonna
We
be our
can't get
catch
a-
22. That we're not gonna be able to get a surveyor. When he tells me he can't come, he can't survey, I'm gonna bind. Okay,
There's more than one surveyor in this country.
well, the one we use in the spot is retired. She told us there's only one she thinks we can get.
Well, I only say that because, Steve had told people that he was backed up. But then two people just recently called and they were fitted.
And I,
So he already has a survey, an earlier survey. So
we
I'm
can't
thinking-
even find that, cause John, we can't find John. We tell you, we bring it tonight. If we can find it, we could not find it. And the other surveyor I want to get me out of the floodplain, gave me May for a neck cancer. Who's a floodplain specialist. I mean, and that's our fault. I mean, I just presume we got 12 and that was it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong.
I don't have a survey. It says ACC.
It's, you should have a boundary survey.
Well, what I have is, whatever I have, right, I don't have, I'll tell you why I know. Because if
You
it's a
said the
survey,
ACC.
this is a survey right here, but if I have ACC. it
I know
means
that.
it
That's
just
the thing
means
that shocked me
Yeah.
is if you look at the deed, it's pinned. I went out and found the pins. Typically for it to be pinned, you have a surveyor, and I matched the pins on both sides. So somebody had to survey. I'm not saying you have, somebody had to survey it at one time.
And one of the pins right by Timmy's garage, the other right up by the gray house.
What?
I know, what I can show you the pins are.
Yeah, okay.
That's all we wanna do. I mean,
Yeah, let's, two options, either come in for site plan approval or.
Okay,
We rule that
that's
they only
fine.
need land use
We'll see if
permits.
we can, we'll see if we can get one, and we'll let her know.
Is the survey needed for the site plan review, or is it needed for just the land use
The land
permit for
use
the
permit.
one?
I'll need
For the land use permit, you need one to make sure that it's not in
Setbacks.
the setback or the floodplain.
or the flood.
the side, the setbacks, the floodplain, or the lot coverage.
But that can be made as a condition of approval.
And he seems to think the lot coverage won't be a problem, like, I gotta have somebody calculate.
Well,
And Ryan's
all I
on-
do is. You got 1.3 acres. Roughly.
So the
6.
mobile
Right,
homes are
right.
12,000.
Let's not do it now, let's talk about what needs to be done and get it done.
So the survey for the land use permit, he needs a survey, and normally I would have a survey for the land use, site plan review. I would have it for either one.
So I think the question is, do they have to come in for site plan or will land use permit suffice? They have to meet whatever requirements we have for a land use permit.
I get a question. Is one of the surveyors Roy Saban? I
What?
believe it's Roy Sabon.
Right.
Yeah, that's who she gave us,
That's what you gave me.
and that's who we're gonna call.
We'll call him tomorrow, first
Call him
thing.
tomorrow.
He originally surveyed over that one time.
Pardon?
What?
He originally surveyed by that property one time.
If he did it, if he's the guy that did it one time, he'll be able to
He
do
may
it.
even have copies, you never know.
Right, but all I'm saying is that if we,
Because
I
if
believe
he
he did it.
He did it, and how, maybe they have it in their files there.
and the problem on it, like I say, if we can't get it done in time. He's saying January, by the time we buy something and close on it, typically that's 60 days.
So,
But the way,
so Jim,
you keep kind of pushing around us, we get it done, but why don't you just rebuild the two-family in Woodsville with the money?
What?
Because the estimated rebuild cost us 460,000
I didn't, yeah,
for 2 unit, 460,000 in Woodsville, New Hampshire.
no, thank you. It's not what we can do. What we can do though.
What are our concerns related to site plan review? Is it anything beyond setbacks and?
No, only.
No, I'm asking you, I'm asking the board. Your concerns are just getting a permit.
Yeah, no shit.
Concerns to the board besides
setbacks, lot coverage,
and floodplain,
and floodplain.
okay, not traffic, not lighting, not landscaping, not,
Correct.
okay. Just, so we're all on the same page.
So,
Now,
so they're not gonna get a building, they won't be able to get a building permit unless they meet those requirements.
right,
So he could basically go by acquiring a land use permit.
I mean, I guess the thing is, they're not really,
Then he's taking the chance that if he doesn't meet the requirement,
Then he can't get it.
they can't get it,
they're not really changing the use because it's already a mobile home park.
right?
You can argue they're not expanding the use because it was 12 units prior and they already have the electric meters there. Do you have water and sewer lines? Are they?
Yeah,
still-
yeah, we got
Yeah,
pictures
that's
of
what I thought you said. Okay,
And the existing mobile homes, even if they're in the setback,
No, some of them are in
Grandfather.
violation. There's nothing we can
Grandfather.
do.
so the 4 new mobile homes can't be in the setback, can't be in the wetlands,
And can't
And-
increase the 70%.
and can't go up to 70%. Now, I mean, for
And they
me,
have your
looking at it
parking.
and doing, I mean, it doesn't look like they're even close to that threshold, but,
right.
I would say a reasonably accurate calculation of the lot coverage. Because, I mean, in this, I don't know if Carol, you did this, but you're using 12,000 square feet per mobile home. I'm sure that each one of those is different, and you need to include the mobile home plus any porch or addition or deck or
Yeah, I
whatever.
know,
but-
I know what coverage is.
So,
Well, we should be able to get that off of the tax cards, the square footage.
We'll just measure, it's easy to measure it.
Well, I know the tax cards usually have.
Like we did, if they do simple land use,
I know.
then it's on him, and he just needs to know that. He's
Right,
gonna meet
but I'm
that.
saying that he would need to come in with a demonstration that with 4 new ones, he's not at 70%.
But that's on you.
Plus, we don't
That-
count the
that's-
wetlands.
That's on you to do.
I'm willing to take the Tyson.
And if you don't, and if you can't meet that requirement, then you
We're
won't,
down,
you won't be able to get it.
if I find out we can't, give them time, we'll call Carol and say we can't meet it. We're out of here.
So to me, then we could stick with what Jimmy said, which is just doing the land use permit.
So they have to have parking. Lot coverage, not in the setbacks. It's up to him to. Get a letter
Demonstrate.
of
Yeah.
a map amendment. Something there.
I have a question. When you say that the wetlands are not included in calculating the lot coverage, what about the mobile homes that are in the wetlands?
It's not wetlands, it's floodplain.
No, wetlands.
It's a different,
Okay.
Floodplain.
okay,
But
okay.
should we not count the mobile homes that are in the floodplain?
We're not
No,
gonna,
we have to count for lot coverage, yes, you have to. figure that out.
So the floodplain, that just, so there's no wetlands then,
no,
okay.
Oh, so you can count the floodplain as open space? Oh,
Yeah, there should be regular,
yeah.
yeah.
okay, all right, so that's
Yeah,
right.
Areas have
If
wet,
he
you know.
were starting from scratch, he'd have to meet the floodplain regulations,
Right.
building code, so, you know, then you'd have a bunch of mobile homes on stilts in there.
This is gonna be a close call.
Right.
It's one of the things we did, and we think we're gonna be out of it, but there's no requirement about not putting in the floodplain in the town we're in. We're within 9 inches. But that's okay.
Well, we'll talk about here, so.
So, yeah,
Well, no, I'm talking on height.
Yeah.
And I think this one, he's right. I think we'll be playing the same kind of game here.
It's a topo, he needs a topo.
Yeah.
Make sure he's out.
And according to the calculations, as well with his lot coverage.
Yeah, you raise them up when you,
No, the
put-
lot,
No, the lot
total
coverage.
lot coverage.
coverage of the lot.
yeah, it's gotta be 70%.
Yeah, but I just calculated the new ones is gonna be about 2,986 square feet.
Just say every mobile home's 1,000, there's 12,000.
No, we,
That's what I came up with.
Yeah, that chart is on the assessment card, I didn't do that chart, the chart was done by the assessors.
Oh, okay, okay.
I make a motion that we don't need site plan review for this.
For a second,
I'm talking that.
Yeah.
okay.
For
I'm
discussion,
in favor, do we want to be more specific that just needs a land use permit?
but that's, he needs that as a requirement anyway.
But I still need a full site plan on top of it. That's what I wanna find out very clearly.
Well,
Right,
Carol's
we're gonna
gonna
go
tell
to that in a
you,
second.
Carol's gonna tell you when you come in for your land use permit, she's gonna tell you what you need to
I
provide
want to
her.
know ahead, or I wanna stop.
So we're gonna need a survey, that's my understanding.
Yeah,
Like,
but
we
you
need to
might
get
need
out of
more
that.
than that. We're gonna need the survey ahead of time.
Carol can guide you through that,
No,
what you need,
I'll
but
need a survey with his application.
right,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaving.
Okay.
does that make sense?
you think about it,
Hold on, Joe.
Yeah. And I think.
it's actually helping the need for housing.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
That's-
that was the other reason why it's.
This,
And I just had a quick question about the, that was the part that confused me the most on the application was the water tapping fees. Are we still being applied with that, even though we already have existing infrastructure there?
Okay,
That's
so
what
here's what happens, we'll have to pull out the old assessment cards for what was there before, and you'll get credit for it, in the land use permit application, there are two, you'll have to fill one out for each mobile home.
Yep.
There are two, water and sewer tap fee forms, so you fill one out based on whatever was there, the old one. We can look at the old assessment cards to see how many, and you'll get credit for them, so if there was a 2-bedroom unit, 1-bathroom unit before, you'll get credit for that, you won't have to pay water and sewer tap fees. But if you have a 3-bedroom replacing a 2-bedroom, then you just have to pay water and sewer tap fees.
So if we add a bathroom, we have to pay.
There's something I might wanna ask you
You've
about that.
already had it.
No, we're trying to go to 2-bathroom units. Okay, that's
Well,
why,
well, then that's the other issue. You can't get 1 bathroom.
yeah, you
That's-
can get a cheaper model than we're using with a 1-bath. Skyline and end up with a shitty house, so I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Joe,
There's another thing you might wanna figure in, are you
What?
gonna put a trailer on the old house lot?
What?
On the Maple Road's old house lot? First one going in on the right, that's been demolished,
That
That was a-
was the
it's not on
plan.
the map.
Yeah.
There was a house there before.
Yeah.
They had what?
A trailer.
What's that?
She had a trailer on there after the house.
No,
No.
no, that one had
trailer
a
just
house
further
built.
down.
I didn't know that, he just told me that tonight.
Yeah, we always wonder why that plan was always.
Put the
big.
trailer in, then she demolished the house. Avery demolished it. But they're gone now, so you can't talk to them. But anyway, if you're gonna put, you can put trailer on the house lot,
Wait a second.
That's the plan, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
then make no, that was gonna bring up, doesn't make any sense then. Cause I was gonna use some of the points in the house can be used towards.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Just an afterthought.
Yeah, no, because I've seen it as model. Decided to go
I made a
with
motion, Joe made a second.
anyone, any further discussion? All
I do
in
have-
favor?
Well, I have one quick thing.
Go ahead.
And it's just real quick. Trying to figure out what to do with that little cabin. Do you have, I'm not saying this meeting, just in the future. I know no one's real big fan of tiny homes, but I kind of want to save that thing, but if it's not gonna get like approval, and then I'll just
What
kind
are
of
you used for now?
So,
Take it-
storage. Like,
Storage.
it does have a kitchen, bathroom,
It was
shower.
it was a cabin one time, with a kitchen, bad shower.
Okay, so here's the problem, dwelling units require 15,000 square feet.
Yep.
So,
50,000 square feet of
Space.
Land.
Please.
for-
But this is on the mobile home property,
But it's not a mobile home and it's a change of use.
And it's a chick, right?
isn't it?
I think you'd be better off
Sort of
with
like
less storage
restricted
cabin myself.
multifamily.
What?
Right,
Well,
so-
would it be change of use when it was fully operational at one point with water, sewer, shower? It would be occupation again, that's,
Just got 4 extra kids.
oh, I know.
Yeah.
No, that's,
Now we're
I'm
pushing
just
for,
looking at it.
now we're pushing for a.
Doesn't
Say-
qualify
I'm not
as-
pushing, I'm just seeing if, I'm
Alright.
just going for general field, general field is knock it down, I'll
You know
knock
what
it
you
down.
wanna do.
That's-
By the
You know
way,
what you wanna
that's
do with
because
the cabin, why don't you just come back?
Yeah,
they
Yeah,
assessed that for
it's one-
60,000.
Realistically, that would trigger site plan because it's.
Right.
Use, like just for something used to be a restaurant, but now it's been a storage unit for 10 years. You can't go just back to being restaurant.
Well,
You
what-
come in for the site plan.
The more accurate use would be abandoned, it's just sitting there, we haven't used it for
Yeah,
anything.
but see, 1 year is, abandonment is 1 year and then. you
Oh,
have to
this is
start
20
from
years.
scratch.
Yeah.
Even on a remodel in a building?
Yeah.
How do you know who's this building in this town? Because it takes
Oh, yeah.
19 months to get a foreclosure through, we buy foreclosures.
well, you came in and got your.
Third hand,
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just-
You voted?
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, good night.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Is there any other business?
I have some.
Okay, Paul,
I know you guys don't wanna stay here any longer, but
Okay.
as part of the reason Jason's here is that when we. When we approved the Andrew Goddard application, we did not take into consideration. The basis for granting those waivers. And whether it changes it or not, we're supposed to do that. And the memo from Jason and Carol and Ray Corber, and the RSA that talks about granting waivers and the power of the planning board to grant them, we are supposed to record in the minutes the A and B, which is strict conformity. Let's see, strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant. Waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and the intent of the regulation and the specific circumstances related to the subdivision or conditions of land in such subdivision indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulation. There's supposed to be hardships for granting those waivers, and we never considered any of those. We just said, we're gonna give them the waivers. And the RSA is pretty specific about how the planning board can give those waivers. While I'm not saying that it's got, like I said, I'm not saying it's gonna change the decision. We have a responsibility to make sure that the reason that we gave those waivers and the hardships for them are stated in the minutes. That's the law.
Okay, well, disagree.
Why do you disagree?
Because the way, the section you're talking about deals with subdivisions, which is a site plan.
Well, that's Jason, he said.
Okay.
He's the one that said that, him and Ray Corber are the one that said that we needed to do that, along with Carol.
Jason, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, as a legal matter, when you are granting waivers, that statute, I believe, you're correct, Jim, does apply to subdivisions. However, as a general matter, yes, you should put the basis for those in the discussion and in the minutes. It is not. It would be a basis for somebody to appeal it if there was an aggrieved party, which is sort of a technical basis. It doesn't mean that the substance is wrong, or that, I think, as I heard Paul say, that the decision would change. So it is it's more of a technical requirement than a substantive requirement, but obviously technicalities can be important in any legal decision. So, that's my thought on that.
So let me ask you, Jason, would this set us up for, what do you call it?
Appeal?
Huh?
An appeal?
No. What do you call it when you do something for one and don't do it for another? So if someone else came in with
Precedent?
a precedent, if someone else came in,
Not
if we don't do this and someone else comes in, they can say, you didn't do it for that piece of property, why you need to do it for mine? You know, I mean, if you're looking at that as well, so it just makes sense, I think, and it's the law. The RSA speaks to that.
Can I just ask a question, Jason?
Sure, you may.
Would it be appropriate and legal and ethical for us to right now go through each of those waivers? We all voted and to say, you know, I voted for that waiver because X, Y, and Z.
That would be wonderful, I believe, from an efficiency standpoint, if that was legally appropriate. However, as I understand what's happening, Paul has sought a rehearing, essentially, which, by the way, unlike ZBAs, planning boards do not actually have to even have a hearing whether to grant a rehearing. But if you do, the first meeting is a public meeting, as this is, at which point the board determines whether to grant the motion for rehearing. And then subsequently, there is a public hearing, at which point the substance of the rehearing and the basis for it is heard. At that meeting, excuse me, so tonight's, your decision is, are we going to grant a rehearing on this issue? Yes or no? And then at the subsequent meeting, which is properly noticed, you then, if you grant a rehearing, hear the full basis for it, at which point you could then put the bases for any waivers in the minutes. So I apologize that my answer potentially results in more work, but that's the way the statutes work for rehearings.
Board does vote to reconsider. Do we have to renotice all the abutters?
Yes, you'd be all the notices as if it was a public hearing, not just the meeting. So the same way you would do for any hearing on any site plan, et cetera.
Basically, it's a new application. I mean, we can rehash the whole entire site plan approval, is that correct? Or is it limited to just the waivers?
So for a motion for rehearing, the person seeking rehearing is supposed to provide all bases for which the board should redetermine its decision. Now, the perhaps nuance here that's a bit potentially unclear to me is if this is a technical issue or if it is being asserted as a basis to change the outcome. If it's not being asserted as a basis to change the outcome, the reality is that would be one reason that you could deny granting a rehearing in the first place. I know that, at least from what I've heard from Paul, he may not be satisfied by that. But if it's a rehearing just to put reasons in the record and it wouldn't change the outcome, then you could, I think, fairly deny it. If there's a basis to say, hey, these weren't put in the record and I don't think this waiver should have been granted, then yes, it's a sort of a new hearing, but limited to those issues. It does not reopen the entire application.
So Jason, the reason that I requested it was because you and Ray and Carol in a memo said that this is how it should be done, and it wasn't done that way. So when I started looking into the RSA, you obviously were right. It is supposed to be done technically to be done. My concern is that the waivers were given without any recognition of what the hardship is for giving the waiver. Would and could that change it? Maybe. I mean, money is not a reason to grant, is not a hardship. So it's not a reason to grant a waiver. If there was safety or some other issues, yes, those are. And that's why I said it really depends upon what the hardship is as to whether or not the waiver gets granted. That's the long and short, I think, of how, I mean, after being on the zoning board, going through all the criteria that we did all the time, it was always based on what the hardship was. And if you look at the RSA, it talks about hardship a little bit. It doesn't really say a lot.
Doesn't deal with site plan approval, and our ordinance specifically allows the board to grant waivers.
But
It doesn't say there has to be a hardship to the property.
it
Yes,
does. It does. Jason, it talks, that RSA talks about in the store, RSA is 1674-44, I think 1674-36. So, but they do refer to doing it and finding out what the hardship is underneath A and B. You know, as you guys have had defined. So
7436 says subdivision regulations. Doesn't say site plan regulations. It says subdivision.
So I apologize. I did not hear specifically which
waivers, Jim.
Sorry.
My apologies. I didn't hear specifically which RSA Paul referenced, but there is also RSA 674-44, which deals with site plan review regulations. So there's different statutes, obviously, talk about subdivision versus site plan. And 674-44 Roman numeral 3 that allows site plan review regulations and allows the planning board to include provision for waiver. So it says you can if you don't put your authority to allow waivers in the site plan review regulation, you can't do it. But if you do, it goes on to say include provision for waiver of any portion of these regulations, period, The basis for any waiver granted by the planning board shall be recorded in the minutes of the board. The planning board may only grant a waiver if the board finds by majority vote that, and then it's a 1 and 2. 1 is strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, or 2, or not and, specific circumstances relative to the site plan or conditions of the land in such site plan indicate the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations. The standard here is not quite as exacting as the ZBA hardship standard, but it is obviously a bit of a hardship standard. So, that's the statute.
So what are you recommending, Jason?
Well, that is a heck of a good question. The reality for me is, because to answer a previous question first, no, this should not, and in my opinion, does not create any precedent. And if somebody comes in to say, wait a minute, you didn't do it for them, you can say, well, that was perhaps a technical error, but there was no aggrieved party that wanted to appeal it any further substantively. And so that became a final decision. Courts, lawyers, judges make technical mistakes all the time. And at the end of the day, if that's the decision and it's not appealed, it becomes final. So that is what I think would be able to happen here. And so I guess my recommendation would be, if it really doesn't change the outcome, then a vote to deny rehearing is probably okay. And that you just make note as far as, I guess, best practices going forward, to take 674-44 into consideration, and very, very briefly, make sure you get something on the record so that if there is a neighbor next time that doesn't like something, it doesn't give them an easy avenue to appeal and just make things more time consuming and costly for the town. So I don't think it needs to be done in this case based on what I understand the totality of the circumstances to be, but going forward, it should be a part of the procedure.
Well, Jason, the only other question I have is, if there was an abutter that potentially could be an aggrieved party, they're not aware of this, that we didn't do this, do they have any standing based on that? Not knowing that we didn't do this?
That you didn't have the so, okay, let me try to answer the question the best I can. If there is somebody who doesn't like what the ultimate outcome was, and so therefore they are aggrieved and would like the outcome to be different, regardless of whether they know of this or not, they would have standing to appeal. If they know of this requirement, they could make that one of the bases for their appeal. If they don't know of the requirement, they don't get to come back later after the deadline or something like that and say, wait a minute, I didn't know about that, I want to try again. So they would be held to the standard of, anybody else, that if you don't know what your reasons to appeal are and you miss the deadline, you can't say I didn't know and try it again later. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it does.
Hold on, but wait a minute, doesn't the butter have to participate, like be present at the hearing? We had 2 hearings on this matter, and I think, we only had abutters really show up at the first hearing. So I think by those abutters not showing up at the second hearing, they've kind of abandoned
Well, they still
their
showed
chance
up.
of appealing.
So to be an aggrieved party, you do not necessarily have to participate, but you could easily get to a legal conclusion that they are not a person who fits within the definition of an aggrieved party if they did not participate. So it is not a bright line, but it is a pretty strong indicator. But at the end of the day, I think one of the most important aspects is that whereas a ZBA is required to go through the rehearing process and even have the consideration, the statutes don't even talk about rehearings before planning boards. And so an aggrieved party, if they were there and they participated and they were very disfavorable towards whatever this ultimate decision was, they would not, even in that situation, have a right to get a rehearing before the planning board. It's just different between planning boards and zoning boards on the rehearing, because with planning boards, where you will typically go is either directly to Superior Court if you don't like a decision that's based on site plan only and has no zoning component, or you will go to an appeal to the ZBA if there is a zoning decision that has sort of been made as a part of the planning board's decision and thereafter to the court. So, to me, given that statutory framework too, that, motions for rehearing are not, statutorily guaranteed or authorized for planning board, decisions, and that there was not anybody that showed up to, indicate their objection to the project, would say that from a practical perspective, this is one of those ones where the decision could lie. If there was any level of discussion around these at all, then you could argue that it's in the minutes, reflected in the minutes. If not, then you would, I guess, have to wait the remainder of the 30-day period for somebody to come out of the woodwork to file. But if they don't, then the decision is final. And as I said, just make sure that going forward, especially for something that's contested, you put all the reasons that you grant any waiver in the record so that you avoid, a substantively contested hearing where this simply, opens the door to come in, even if there's no good substantive argument against what the site plan was.
Paul, you have any more questions?
So what are we gonna do?
Well, so I mean, basically, the member has to make a motion for rehearing and someone has to second it. And then we vote on it.
So I'll make a motion that we rehear it in order to
Reconsider.
address the requirements that town council presented to the town of Lincoln, to Carol and the planning board.
Okay, is there a second?
That means we have to do the whole meeting over and everything?
That doesn't mean,
We have to renotice all the abutters, you said.
Just the point we discussed. tonight.
no, because if you listen to what Jason said, what that means is you have to vote to have a hearing. And then you have a hearing. It doesn't have, it just means at that point, it gives you the ability to say in the minutes what those waivers were, why you granted the waivers in the
But
minutes.
if you renotice the abutters, theoretically, someone didn't come to the previous meeting, show up and say, well, wait a minute.
Look, we screwed up and didn't
Okay,
do it, so let's,
okay,
that-
let's
that-
just,
that's my-
let's just get through the vote first and then. we'll
That's
worry
my
about
point.
logistics.
but Jason is advising us that we should answer that and put it in the minutes. That's what he said. Is that not what you said? In order to do that, don't we have to have a rehearing?
Yes.
So yes, if you are gonna put it in the minutes, you would have to have the rehearing, because unfortunately, just with the way the procedure works, you couldn't sort of retrofit it in tonight's meeting. You would, yes, have to renotice this as a public hearing on the motion. It does not reopen the entire substance of the site plan application. It's limited to, the request for rehearing, which could be, I don't think this should be approved because the basis wasn't in the minutes, and the board puts the basis in the minutes and you're done. That's one way it could be done. As a practical matter, Paul, I don't think it is definitely required to go through the exercise in this instance because of the likelihood of it actually having an impact in the end. But you are technically correct, from my opinion. This is a statutory requirement. So it's up to the board to decide if they're comfortable letting it ride and having it be a final decision that just becomes final, and then taking and following the process going forward. It does not, if nobody appeals it, the fact that the statute wasn't followed doesn't invalidate the board's action. It would stand. And then just do it differently the next time if you wish. So I apologize that it's a little bit gray area, because I don't think from a legal perspective, it's as easy as to say, yes, you absolutely have to grant the rehearing. I think that is within your discretion for this particular situation. But the process would be, you grant the rehearing, you notice the next meeting, and you have a full quote unquote hearing on just what the basis for rehearing is, not all the other site plan criteria.
I mean,
So,
We're good.
so Paul made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, might as well vote on it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in
So,
favor?
yeah, I have this discussion. So there was 3 waivers that were granted,
Yeah.
that we voted on. Right. There was no, I guess, definite reasoning listed in the minutes. Would it be, appropriate, legal, whatever, to go back and ask that the, recording secretary listen again to those 3 sections and just denote in the minutes what the reasoning was behind the prevailing vote?
I mean, we did have discussion on waivers. wasn't
We
it?
did, it wasn't like we just voted them, we had lengthy discussions, and some of the things were alluded to in here, but like I noticed, like when we talked about the one on the frontage on the street, I particularly made the point that if these were 3 separate buildings, that they would all be allowed 5-foot setbacks, in combining them together into a single building, in my opinion was, it shouldn't change that. And that vote prevailed. Would that be a sufficient reason to just, it was said at the meeting, it wasn't recorded in the minutes, to add that to the, just go back and add that to the minutes, add that support to the meeting minutes, rather than bring this all up again?
I think that would be an appropriate sort of fix in this scenario. If it's in the recording, you'd have to properly go through the procedure to amend the minutes to include that. The statute does say the planning board may only grant a waiver if the board finds by majority vote that, and then it lists the criteria. So if you were to feel that the minutes and the votes that were taken satisfies that, then that would be fine. But if in your mind, it does go through the reasoning, but it doesn't seem that the vote was actually made for those, and it wasn't a vote to say, hey, we're granting this waiver because X, which is, one of those reasons, then that fix wouldn't definitively satisfy the statutory provision. But I think that would be a good, I guess, compromise, for lack of a better word, to sort of correct the record for what the reasons were, even though it might not technically tick all the boxes for the statute. But I get Paul is right as far as what the statute says. But that to me does not mean that the board would absolutely have to go through the whole process because of the totality of the circumstances. So again, just to be clear, OJ, if that would fix it because it's clear that that's what was voted on, then you could amend the minutes to reflect it, and that would satisfy the statute.
But if we have the rehearing, we can correct it all. It doesn't have to change anything at the end, as I said in my response here. It doesn't, I'm not going at it to try and change the end, but what it will do is, if we have a rehearing, is we can address and vote on those waivers and the reasons why, and that's all we need to do.
And
Because
you have to notify the abutters.
Well, we still have to notify the abutters, but nothing's gonna change, because we're just having the meeting to address the reason why the waivers were given and make sure that it's in the minutes and vote on it as a board. And that, to me, makes the most sense of everything. You spend a few dollars on a notification of several abutters around that property, but the end result is we comply with the law, which
Just
the
let
technicality of
me
the
get it right, that's all I care.
I think we can ask a question.
I care about our liability here. What if we have this hearing, come up with reasons, and the vote on any single one of these changes to a no? We don't grant the waiver.
Then the applicant would have the right either to try and seek rehearing before the planning board, which, as I'd said, is not one of the, it's not a normal pathway. If they don't want to do that, which maybe they wouldn't know they could do, but they could then appeal that to the ZBA, or go directly to Superior Court. So as far as liability, the town wouldn't be liable for damages in any way for changing its decision based on what appears to be a valid motion for rehearing. But the liability would be time and money.
But if we have a rehearing, that starts the appeal clock all over again. It's 30 days from the date of the second decision.
That's correct. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, time and money. It increases the time in which somebody else could challenge it. And if it does, one of the waivers changes, and that has an impact upon the applicant that they don't like, they have the right to go through rehearing and or appeal process, which at 30 days here, 30 days there. And then, of course, if you need legal counsel to deal with that, then that is as money. But liability in the typical sense of we owe them something, no, because this process is really not one that subjects towns to liability. As long as you're doing these things in good faith, you can't be sued for having granted a rehearing and changing your mind. That's okay. But you could subject yourself to going through this application for many more months and costing legal fees in dealing with it one way or the other.
We've already spent money on you, we spent money on Ray Corber, we spent money on Carol, and you guys prepared that, and we didn't even follow any of it. So to sit here and worry about money now seems to be a little bit.
Oh, well, so I am not actually saying that you should worry about money. Because I try to not do that part of things, but in answering the question about liability, there's no direct liability to the applicant, but there would be essentially liability in the sense of more time and money. And so I'm not saying you should care about it, but that it's up to you to decide whether you do based on that situation. So from a legal perspective, you would never hear me say, don't take the appropriate path based on a concern for money, because I try to make sure I always take the appropriate path. So.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Jason? Are we ready to vote? There's been a motion and a second. All in favor of having a rehearing, raise your right hand and say aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, motion fails. Is there anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
That's a good.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay,
again.
I'm opposed.
I would like to stay here all night.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 2 no's and 3 yeses on adjourning. Unless you want to revote that too.
What, adjourning?
Yeah,
People voted no?
right here, just do that.
Oh, yeah.
We were just kidding, don't listen to us.
Thank you,
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome. Have a good night, everyone.
What's left of it?
Yeah, right. Right. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Oh.